Chair Schmidt, you may begin.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Welcome to the September 27th, 2021 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this Planning Commission meeting is being held using Zoom webinar format. So you will see that the planning commissioners and staff are panelists. Please note that there are several ways to submit comments during this meeting. You may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the raise hand button located at the bottom of your screen. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom webinar by phone, you took away my piece of paper. Sorry about that. Okay, members of the public who are participating in the Zoom webinar by phone can dial *9 to raise a hand. You may also send your comments by email to publiccomments@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the meeting, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, I will ask you to raise your hand when the agenda item is up for discussion so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. We ask that you also turn on your video at that time so that we can have a more clear communication simulating the experience we would have if we were meeting in person. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. Okay, moving on to item number 2, roll call. The record should note that all members of our commissioners are present this evening.
Through the chair, we have Commissioner Camarado, who's actually absent.
Oh, no, we do have one gone. Yes, excuse me. Okay, moving on to item number 3, approval of minutes. We have meeting minutes to review and approve this evening from the August 23rd, 2021 regular Planning Commission meeting. Are there any comments, changes, or discussions regarding the meeting minutes?
Mr. Chair, I will recuse from approval of these minutes since I was not present at the meeting.
Okay. Then do we have any motions?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the amended minutes for August 23rd, 2021.
Second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Torontos and a second by Commissioner Larios. Can we have a vote?
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Yes.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0-1-1. Okay. Moving on to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
Yes, we do. I'd like to note that item 8D 1204 El Camino Real has been continued due to an error in the noticing, in the public hearing noticing, so that item will be heard at the next Planning Commission meeting on October 12th. Staff will ensure that the notices are correct, and we will be re-noticing for that meeting. Thank you.
Okay. And that takes care of that.
Mr. Chair.
Any recusals that we want to discuss right now?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that. Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Chair, I will be recusing on item 9A, 1120 Summer Avenue, as our firm is the architect for the project.
Okay. And I will be recusing from item 8A, 164 Pepper Avenue, as I live within 500 feet. Okay. Then moving on to item number 5, public comments, non-agenda. Members of the public may speak about any item that is not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission meeting agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. A timer will sound at the end of the time. I may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Please speak clearly into the microphone. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda? Okay, seeing no hands, then we'll be moving on. Do we have any emails or any other comments come in?
No, there were no public comment emails for non-agenda items.
Okay, so then I would say moving on to study items, but we don't have any this evening. So then we're going to move on to item number 7, consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine. They are acted on simultaneously unless separate discussion and/or action is requested by the applicant, a member of the public, or a commissioner prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt. Would any member of the public or the applicant like to pull this item for discussion? Or would any member of the Planning Commission like to pull this item for discussion? Not seeing any hands. So is there any discussion of the motion? Or do I have a motion actually?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve this item, approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Great. We have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus and a second by Commissioner Larios. Any discussion? Good. Let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye, sorry.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmid.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-0-1. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. So moving on to agenda item number 8A, 164 Pepper Avenue. I will hand over the duties to Acting Chair Loftus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we move on to item 8A, 164 Pepper Avenue, if you are the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners unable to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding the project? Seeing none, the record should note that I was not present at the meeting where this was reviewed the first time, the 823 meeting, but I did watch the video and I did visit the site. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we hear the staff report, please?
This application is for design review. A historic resource evaluation was prepared for this property that concluded that it is not eligible for listing on the National or California Register of Historical Resources. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing single-story house and detached garage to build a new 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage. The proposed project will have a floor area of 3,713 square feet, where 3,714 square feet is the maximum allowed. 4 bedrooms are proposed. The new detached garage provides 1 covered parking space and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. All other zoning code requirements have been met. The applicant has submitted revised plans to address the Commission's comments from the design review study hearing. The changes are listed in the staff report. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions of staff.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? So seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing with the applicant. Please come forward, state your name, and add anything else to the staff report that you'd like to add.
Hi, James Chu from Chu Design Associates. So there were, well, this project actually came before you over a month ago, and there were 3 minor changes. 2 were at the front, and 1 were for the staircase, which will reduce the size of the window. Again, you know, the neighbors' concerns were privacy, and we do have, you know, 2 major window, well, 2 window facing the property, which is a bathroom and a laundry room. So, which at the last meeting, I think some of the commissioner mentioned that it is not a major impact. So, so we hope that you like the project and approve this project tonight. I'd like to answer any question you may have.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant? It looks like, Commissioner Torres.
Yeah, sorry, just one question, James. One of the items that was mentioned at the last meeting was on the landscape plan. You know, I don't think it's a major issue, but you and the applicant, would you be opposed to extending that boxwood hedge further towards the front of the property in order to help with some landscape screening along that side of the house? I know you have you just have a pea gravel area along that side of the house. You may have to just sculpt it around the chimney area, but would you be opposed to revising the landscape plan in that regard?
That's something I need to talk to our client, my client. I'm sure
Okay.
be easily accommodated.
Okay. I mean, we may be able to cover that as something that staff could review. I don't even know if it rises to the level of an FYI, but if the project could otherwise move forward, that might be something that you could bring back to staff perhaps, but we'll see what other commissioners think.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? I see none. Okay, then I'm going to open the public hearing. No, whoops. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Or were any comments received through email?
I just checked and there were no comments received via email.
And I see no hands among our, whoops, better check that. I see no hands among our public attendees. Screen management is key here. Okay, given that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Say.
Yes, thank you. So I think that the architect did a nice job of addressing our comments. I think that the front and the right side elevations are improved. That view from the stairwell window now a little bit reduced so as not to look at the roof of the adjacent garage or accessory structure on the left property. Looks great, and I would say this project is ready to be approved.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Toronis.
I agree 100% with what with Commissioner Say's comments. That was all I was going to add, or all I was going to say.
Well, that sounds good. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Acting Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the project with one added condition that a revised landscape plan for the boxwood hedge along the left side of the property be resubmitted for staff review, and that the designer and and applicant can coordinate with at a staff level for that final approval.
I will second that motion.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Taronis and seconded by Commissioner Say. Any discussion on the motion? Looks like not. I will just comment. I think the project is quite nice. The changes that were made were improvements, and it was pretty good before. So well done. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Acting Chair Loftus.
Aye. Okay, the project then, the motion passes 5011. And action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $708, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. I'll invite Mr. Chair Smith back and hand it back over to him.
Great, thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to item 8B, 1814 to 1820 Ogden Drive. Will the applicant or the applicant's representative please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time? If possible, we ask you to also turn on your video at that time. Okay, were any of the commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I just want to note that I was not present at the study meeting for this project on January 25th, but I did watch the video. I took copious notes.
Thank you,
And
sir.
I visited the project site. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. So let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. This is an application for environmental review, lot merger, design review, conditional use permit for tandem parking and use of mechanical parking stackers, approval of community benefits bonuses, condominium permit, and tentative condominium map for new 6-story 90-unit condominium building at 1814 and 1820 Ogden Drive. The site currently contains 2 separate parcels, 1814 and 1820 Ogden. At 1814, there's a 1-story office building, and 1820 Ogden contains a 3-story office building. Combining these lots would total approximately 33,000 square feet. The site is located about a half mile from the Millbrae multimodal station. And the applicant is proposing to demolish both buildings, merge the parcels, and construct a new 6-story 90-unit condominium building. The building would include 20 studio apartments, 15 1-bedroom apartments, and 55 2-bedroom apartments, or units, I should say, condominium units, sorry. 5% or 5 of the units would be available for low-income households that don't exceed 80% of the average median income for San Mateo County. The overall height would be approximately 72 feet, or 75 feet is the height limit, and the project would have 145 on-site parking spaces located in 2 levels. One would be at grade and one would be below grade. 45 of those spaces would be provided in a tandem configuration, and 66 of the spaces would be in puzzle stackers, mechanical parking stackers. The North Burlingame Mixed Use Zoning Code does permit these types of alternative parking options with approval of a conditional use permit. The applicant also included a TDM program, a Transportation Demand Management Plan, with their project. That does entitle them to a 20% parking reduction, provided, however, that they can get a permanent mobility mode shift towards alternative transportation for 25% or greater of the building occupants. So you will see that the conditions of approval require some metrics and deliverables in terms of the TDM. The TDM is provided for you in Appendix A of the CEQA document and does include things such as transportation coordinator, promotional programs for new residents, online transportation kiosk on site, as well as bike parking and EV charging stations. Overall, there would be 145 spaces with the TDM reduction. The site would only require 95 spaces. So they would have 50 spaces in excess of what would be required with this reduction. The North Burlingame mixed use zoning does provide incentives for density, provided that you can provide additional community benefits. So the applicant is seeking approval for a tier 3 project. They have noted that they will provide 3 community benefits. One will be the affordable housing at the 5% for low income. The other is a public plaza that would be approximately 3,200 square feet, or 2,000 square feet is required. And the other community benefit will be a zero net energy building. So essentially the applicant has provided a memorandum noting that they will commit to the Peninsula Clean Energy's Opt-Up program, which is called Eco 100. And this program is optional, but it does use 100% renewable energy. The application was reviewed under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to section 15183, which is basically a streamlined environmental review when you have projects that are consistent with densities established in your existing zoning community plan or EIR that was certified. And in this case, the project has been deemed consistent with our recent general plan EIR. The application includes mitigation measures that are applicable from our EIR, as well as project-specific mitigations. And in performing the exemption checklist for 15183, it was determined all environmental impacts will be less than significant, and therefore no additional environmental review was necessary. This project first appeared before the Planning Commission January 25th of this year. That was for environmental scoping and design review study. At that meeting, the Planning Commission did receive 3 letters of concern from the neighbors, which I attached in your staff report, and there were no public comments received at the hearing. On balance, the Planning Commission received this project fairly well. There were some comments regarding the design and specifically potential impacts to Sunrise, a senior living facility, which is located just south of the project site. The applicant has worked on revised plans, which you have this evening dated August 23rd, and they've also summarized the changes to the plans in their September 20th response letter. The project architect is here this evening too, and will also walk you through those details. Staff would note that in the staff report, we have provided you recommended findings for the design review application, the conditional use permit application, as well as for the condominium permit. So this evening, the Planning Commission should hold a public hearing on the application and consider public testimony and the analysis contained in our staff report. Affirmative action should be taken separately by resolution and include findings supporting the Planning Commission's decision. The reasons for any action should be clearly stated for the record. This motion is for the following requested entitlements: a lot merger and tentative condominium map, which is just a recommendation to City Council; design review for construction of a new 6-story 90-unit condominium building; a conditional use permit request for tandem parking, as well as the use of mechanical parking stackers; approval of community benefit bonuses for a tier 3 project in the North Burlingame mixed use district; and a condominium permit for the 90 condominium units being proposed. This concludes my presentation. I would like to note there are several members of the project team that are here this evening from ICF, our CEQA consultant, as well as the project landscape architect, the applicant's traffic consultant, and other members of the development team. So if there are any questions that you have this evening that they can answer, we've asked them to please raise their hand, and then they will be let in as panelists to respond to any commission questions. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for me.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for staff at this time? Okay, Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, Catherine, I can't remember. We do so many of these projects, but with condominiums, are we required to have guest parking or delivery parking?
Let me see.
I thought with condominiums we were, with apartments we weren't, or
I
something.
believe we do. And let me just pull up my staff report. So they do have additional parking spaces for the guest inside the garage. And for delivery spaces, I believe it's on the side of the driveway on the right side of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Where the driveway is located.
Okay, Vice Chair Loftus.
Catherine, can you talk a little bit about how the public plaza works in Burlingame? Is it like San Francisco? Is it markers that say right to pass and it's got a plaque that says, what happens in Burlingame? How is it managed? And what are the constraints on that use of that public space? Maybe we've talked about it, I just can't remember right now.
You're talking about the public plaza?
Yeah, the public plaza, yeah.
The public plaza. Okay, so it is maintained and operated by the property owner. So in this case, it would have to be part of their HOA. And it is supposed to be maintained for them. I'm not sure that we have the verbiage together yet, but we'll probably work on that, when our first one out of the gate. It seems like most of our projects in North Burlingame and North Rollins Road do have the community plaza, if you will. So I don't know the exact language, but I'm assuming we will have something that would say to that effect, that this is private property, but it's used for passive recreation use, something to that effect.
And can the property owner who manages it set hour constraints on the space and that sort of thing?
I'm sure it's something that's probably going to be open from like dusk to dawn or something like that you don't want people hanging out there at night and being loud for the residents.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great idea. I just wonder, I didn't realize it was the first one out of the gate. I know we've seen a lot of them and I wondered how well we have formulated our regulations or a plan for this.
Yeah, it's not it's definitely not the first one out of the gate in terms that we've approved the public plaza, but as far as construction, there are a few ahead of this one. And I think we'll probably have that kind of tightened up a bit, with the city attorney's office and,
Okay.
As those projects, but I think there are a few ahead that are probably in the building construction phase. So I could better answer your question probably in the next couple months, but that's a good point.
Yeah, it does seem like that we need to have our ducks in a row on that, because it could be problematic under certain circumstances, but I think it's a generally good idea. Okay, thanks.
Okay, seeing no more hands, then I'm going to open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Well,
That's you, Ms. Levy.
Okay, well, I'll speak as the architect. I will tell you, Commissioner Loftus, that we don't have gates. And so really the intent is, and you'll see from our presentation, that in the first 10 feet, in this particular area, we're required to have 60% planting. So it is conceived as a planting buffer, just in the code. And after that, the plaza is between the building and and that. And I think I guess everybody's hoping that the planting and the plaza will not have to be gated off, that it will be done with lighting and stuff like that. So it's not like in San Francisco where the gates open and they never really look open. So if I could have my slides, I'll run you through the project pretty quickly. Next slide. As Catherine mentioned, this is a project located in that dense zoning for housing on Ogden Way, close to Truesdale. To the south of us is the senior housing, and to the north of us is actually a project we had previously designed in the former zoning. Next. In looking at the site context, architecturally, we were given the whole idea of this very broad horizontality that exists in the neighborhood. And on the bottom of the slides, you can see the Sunrise senior housing number 5. And number 6 is actually a Google Street View where we're actually pointing out that Sunrise has its driveway between us, as well as a planting strip. So the building is a good 30 feet plus, and our building has a 10-foot setback at a minimum. So all in all, we will not be, up against this building at all. Next. In looking at the site plan, our lot is considerably deeper than the Sunrise lot. So what happens is that 2/3 of our building, basically between the courtyard, which is 45 feet deep from the property line, and the rear of the building, which doesn't even really come close to their building, that 2/3 of our building will not have any really impact. And we located the courtyard accordingly, so it would sort of break up the monotony that they would see. And also we only have one unit that could potentially even face, some of the windows face the adjoining Sunrise senior housing. So in the most case, either the housing isn't quite next to the building or 30 feet plus, but in a lot of cases it's 45 feet away. And again, the plaza is set back according to the tier 3. Next. Again, the parking and the entrance, and I'll go through that later, where we have our own community room, but our lobby and our package room is really separated from the space. And in this case, the community room is actually for the tenants of the building, although there is another community room upstairs that we see is much more the sort of like community hub. We did purposely locate the driveway contingent to the Sunrise, so there would only be one pedestrian break, and maximize the on-street parking wherever possible. Next slide. Okay, as I mentioned, we've taken great care to break down the massing even within the courtyards, and we have a lot of units that are in the corners that are focused inwardly on their own space, where the units themselves face their own courtyards and give and take. Again, so the courtyard is a general amenity, but the outdoor living space is really broken up into little rooms. Next slide. So diving in, based on the commissioner's comments, we've done a couple of things. One, and the landscape architect is here to talk about it. In our 10-foot setback, we're going to increase the planting to something that could conceivably go to 20 or 25 feet tall. We have a trellised area. We've included this sound wall, which is a full 10-foot height with glazed openings, and so to buffer any noise that would have here. This is also conceived as various outdoor rooms. Again, it's not scheduled for big parties. There are parties around here. There isn't like, this is the communal gathering area. There's not a big party room or anything. We don't see that, especially since so many of our own units would be disturbed by anything really noisy. There is a small barbecue pit and then a water feature. So again, we see it as much more as a quiet open space. Next. In the front, as I mentioned, we're required to have 60% of our front yard planted, which actually turns out to be quite a challenge because we actually, between our driveway and our pedestrian entrance, you can see that we've been toying with how to sort of keep the alley of trees that exist currently, or continue the alley of trees that has been started on Ogden throughout the road, and yet maintain a transparency and added some seating in the plaza. Again, we agree with your concerns about not wanting it to be a nuisance, and I think this is going to be an amenity in progress on how we all address that. Next. As you know, in this MU zoning, for the tiers, there's setback controls, which is actually how to minimize the appearance of the mass on the adjoining properties. The floor plan is actually reflected in the break like the other buildings that happens at the end of the corridor. Next. So this is the view. Here you can see our sound wall between the building. You can see that the massing sort of kind of relates to the building next door and the horizontal. And we've actually really tried with these elements to break up the mass and have, instead of reading like the 6-story building it's going to read, has this other play on the read. And you can see the big wide, it's a 75 feet wide break in the building. And this rear piece is almost outside the whole sort of view of Sunrise. Next. And last, the rendering that Catherine showed. And next, I know that there was some concern about the windows. This middle slide is still under construction, but this is a typical detail, which given the Title 24 regulations, we end up with walls that are quite thick. So it's easy to have even nail-on fins recessed with extended wood trim that succeeds in using very simple windows, but giving them some depth of the inset. And this is probably a very similar installation to what we'd be doing in some of our 2-story reads, but probably with a metal panel here instead of the hardy board. So I'm available to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Levy right now? Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, hi, Toby. So I getting back to my question I had with Catherine, is there a delivery spot or a parking place for delivery vehicles? And is the guest parking clearly marked and directed?
The guest parking will be clearly marked. I believe this project, we also have an Uber Amazon delivery space that we've agreed to in the traffic plan that will be marked on the sidewalk as part of that. But I also believe we have a pull-out space as the driveway carves in for a small delivery space.
Yeah, because the driveway width looks to be 21 feet.
Yeah, and then it curves in, you see.
Okay.
And I mean, that's the last we left of it, that one could park there, but with our on-street parking. So we were assuming that this would be a space, in I don't know what you want to call it, after the first 40 feet or so, since it is going to curve in past the 10 feet of our setback.
Right, and that would be clearly marked for those delivery or Uber vehicles as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
But more and more, the traffic planners have urged us to have these delivery spaces in front of the buildings for both the Ubers and the Amazons or Lyft.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Tronis.
Thank you. Toby, in the staff report, in one of there was some discussion at the study meeting about the plaza down at the ground level. And there was mention of additional tables and seating in that front plaza in the staff report. Is that depicted in sort of the seat walls that are around the planters, or how's that occurring? If we can
Well, you can see in the seat walls around the planters, but also in these tables and chairs. that,
Okay,
that are going to be there.
okay, in that plaza underneath.
Right, and then around here, we saw that more as the Uber waiting space for the
Right.
tenants, and
Okay.
that this would be a much more, again, it's that, it's that, okay, what do we invite, and are we ready for what makes use of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for better or worse, with some of the pedestrian traffic that you might get from the high school, this might be, a little bit of a, students walking home, hang out at the table for a little bit. They'll have to control themselves, and there'll be the requisite policing that comes just from being neighborly, but it could be just a nice little gathering spot. Okay, so there's the
I
table
think
there.
we were hoping that the more formalized in the tables would
Mhm.
be different than having benches.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
So
you could
it's
sit and
sort of where
collaborate.
the benches are closer to the entry.
Right,
So,
okay. All right, got it. Thank you. Appreciate that.
sure.
I wanted to keep going on that one a little bit because that was actually an area I was going to go to. I'm curious about what you guys envision those tables and chairs to be like, and whether or not you've thought about something heavier like a concrete solution that maybe isn't going to,
Get
have a
up and
maintenance
walk
issue,
away.
walk away. I'm trying to think, how do you make that long-term a nice place for us to enjoy that isn't going to be a maintenance nightmare for the HOA?
I've been thinking about that too. I will not do concrete because that's just skateboard heaven. So
True.
what I would probably do is what I've seen done on the Embarcadero in Oakland and also in San Francisco, where they're metal chairs and metal tables. They have spaces and they're just bolted down, but they're metal with spaces, and so they look inviting, but they don't, invite skateboarders. Whereas anything you would do in concrete would be solid enough and whatever. But we can choose something and then run it by you. The landscape architect is also on this call.
Yeah, and I know we're early, and I was just hoping that by the time we get further along, that'll evolve into something more permanent.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see some more hand here. Commissioner Larios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Toby, thanks for the wonderful presentation. I just have a quick question about the plaza. Is there like a maximum occupancy for this plaza, or how many people can fit in that plaza or in that private area?
This one's pretty big. I think the whole plaza, which is in the blue, I think we've designated the public this is like the separation. So this is the part in front of, it says public seating area. That's the public. I don't know. I would guess it's like a good 2,000 square feet. Because this looks like it's more like 75 feet. So it's a good sized plaza.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that gives me a better idea of how many people might be able to mingle or stand and sit, or a mixture of the both in that area. Thanks.
Probably quite a lot.
Okay. Vice Chair Loftus.
Yeah, I'll stay in the plaza since I asked that question early on. It was trying to get at these very things that, in San Francisco, you're always walking a very fine line between, as you say, who you're inviting in and are you ready for whoever gets invited in. And being a public plaza, it's very difficult to regulate that. I did the public plaza for One Market, the Mission side of One Market, and we put in folding wooden benches to keep the homeless from sleeping there at night. And so at night they would get folded up and locked with a lock, and nobody could sleep on the bench at night. But it's sort of a funny solution when it's a public offering. And so I think that we really need to, the city needs to really understand what we're trying to achieve by inviting these public plazas, and especially the burdens that we're placing on those who develop these public plazas. You know, there's clearly public benefit, but it can easily, the switch can get flipped pretty quickly if you're not careful. So this is a really, it's a great thing that's happening here, I think, but I'm not sure that the answers are that easy.
I think we're going to have to carefully consider the lighting, which, as you know, is one of those critical pieces. You don't want enough of it to light up a ball field, but you want enough of it not to have, you know, and subtle enough that it doesn't allow for nooks and crannies.
Exactly. And I guess mine wasn't a question. It was just following on the general conversation. But I think it looks good, and I'm glad that the public space is there.
Okay, with that, doesn't look like we have any more questions for you. Is there any others of your team that wish to add on before we go to the public?
I just have a quick question, Mr. Chair, but
Yes.
I actually have a quick question for staff. And I mean, this was before my time when I was joining this esteemed commission. But I wanted to know, do we have a definition for plaza in our, you know, as far as in our code or in our guidelines? Do we define it?
Well, the zoning code does talk about the public plazas in both the North Burlingame and North Rollins Road area do have a minimum requirement of 2,000 square feet. And then the other criteria do require that they have certain amenities. So there's trash, recycling, bike racks, seating, and then there's, as Toby talked about, minimum landscape requirements. So it's more defined in terms of what you need to encompass in it for it to be called a plaza.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, unless there's anybody else on the project team that wishes to speak, we can go ahead and move into public comment.
Okay, I have received 3 public comments. I will go ahead and start with the first one.
Okay, you're on.
I previously submitted observations regarding the plans for 1814 and 1820 Ogden Drive on January 4th of this year. As I stated in my previous list of concerns, I have been a resident in said area for now 20 years and have moved here 2001. I have been content with my living situation in this 1950s apartment building neighborhood. With the advent of Sunrise Living and condominiums at 1838, a parking situation has arisen, which I addressed in my former letter to you. Now, additional structures are in the planning stages, those at 1868 and 1870, and now 1814 and 1820, with a change in the North Burlingame mixed-use zoning standards, which are favorable to the city's needs, but not to the immediate area where the structures might be built. Little to no consideration has been made from what I have read in your reports to the residents already living here. The structures will not be in alignment with those on West Ogden, which are mainly 3-story buildings. There is a tranquil feeling in the area. That will change with the very tall planned structures, both 7 and 6 stories. Right now, I can look out of my dining room window and get a glimpse of Mount Diablo. I can see all blue sky from my windows. That will change drastically. Mentioned is made in the report that the public plaza is planned to enliven Ogden Drive. I do not understand the necessity to do that when the atmosphere here is fine. The plaza will mean perhaps having people here who might not live in the area and who might require street parking. The parking areas will provide 45 spaces for bicycles. During that time I have lived here, I rarely see anyone riding a bicycle to work. I would challenge the need for so many bicycle spaces. Affordable and workforce housing are required as part of the Tier 3 plan. The requirement is that the income should be 80% of the San Mateo County median income, which is $138,500. That would mean that the interested parties would need to earn at least $100,899. That figure does not seem realistic. Some retired persons living on a pension would not qualify. While I appreciate the opportunity to express my concerns about new structures being planned in the area, realistically, I do not foresee any change in the extensive planning that has already been made. The number of stories will not be reduced as they meet the North Burlingame mixed use standards. Street parking will still be a concern no matter how many spaces are provided in the building, and the number of spaces provided per unit probably does not match the reality of persons per unit actually having a vehicle. When I was reading the extensive report, I came across a comment which struck me. When I looked for it again in order to cite its location, I could not find it, but it basically said that the proposed structure would benefit all. I respectfully disagree. I will miss seeing the blue sky. Respectfully submitted by Gloria J. Thompson, D. Velez, Burlingame resident. Public comment number 2. Dear sirs, I am not in favor to build a 6-story, 90-unit condominium building. Thank you, Maria L. Ross. Public comment number 3. Hello, sirs and madam. I would like to say I am not in favor of development of the project site at 1814, 1812 Ogden Drive Zone, North Burlingame mixed use. We are 4 people in an apartment and we disagree. Thank you so much, Jesse Saison. And that concludes the public comments that I have received thus far. Planning Manager Rubin might have some.
Yes, we did receive one additional public comment after the meeting started, so let me read that. This is from Rachel, no last name given. I am on the call now. I would like to know when the building at 1820 is going to be torn down, approximately. I work in the building and live in the neighborhood. And that's signed Rachel. There are no other public comments submitted.
Okay. It looks like we have a couple hands up in the public here. So I'd like to call on Charles Boyton. If you'd like to, there you go. If you unmute yourself, you have the floor.
Thank you. And I have 3 minutes, correct?
Yes.
All right. So I'm very concerned about this project. There is no parking available for guests for the existing traffic and existing residents right now. Second, the amount of additional cars that are going to be put on Ogden, where are we looking at the need for additional street or traffic lights, both at Ogden and Truesdale and Ogden at Murchison? Murchison and Ogden, you have the high school, and you have 1870 and 1868 with, I don't know, so many additional units. This is going to be a traffic nightmare, okay? You have more guest parking for bikes, and like the first commenter who was read said, I haven't yet to see anybody riding their bikes to the Millbrae Transit Center, okay? I mean, we have politics here trumping logic, okay? And it's like, if this is approved, this planning commission is throwing this neighborhood under the bus, okay? There's other ways to do this. There's other ways to meet these regulatory compliance requirements. I'm also concerned, with the Sunrise property, there was no completion bond available, and that property, due to an economic collapse, was unfinished for 7 years. It stood as a steel structure, okay? And that resulted in significant construction issues. To this day, that building has problems with water, okay? And is there any completion bond for these structures at all, okay? Because we have yet to see the pandemic economic fallout that is bound to happen as aid is dried up. We're already seeing some issues that have who knows what kind of ramifications that are starting to play out in China. And the interconnected economic financial system that we're in. I'm absolutely shocked by this effort to push through this project, okay, and come up with excuses that are at best just glossing over the real issues. There is no parking. There is no parking. And when you have 4 or 5 individuals in one unit, which is going to happen, I don't know where these people are going to park. My time is almost up. I would really strongly encourage, we got to do something different here. If you need more buildings, you got to start looking at these 2 or 3 unit things and come up with some creative ideas and something that works for everybody. And clearly, this is not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Voighton. Okay. Next up, Mr. Michael Yup. There he is. Mr. Yup, if you unmute yourself, it's your turn to speak. Mr. Yep, have you tried? There you go. It looked like you unmuted yourself, but I'm not hearing you yet. Your microphone isn't working. We're not hearing you, Mr. Yep. Ruben, do you have any suggestions?
Yes, Mr. Yep, we still cannot hear you. You might want to play with your settings. Or you can certainly email your comments, although we'd have to reopen the public hearing later on and during the discussion, but we still cannot hear you. We can give him another couple of seconds and see if he can get his audio going.
Well,
Okay.
Mr. Yep, I would encourage you to write up your comments and send them in. And if you do that quickly, maybe the planning manager can read them into the record for you. In the meantime, however, I do not have any other hands raised for public comment. So then I'm going to close the public comment for now. And we'll move back to the planning commissioners. So commissioners, do we have any comments or discussion? Oops. Commissioner Tronis?
Yeah, thank you. Well, after watching the video for the study meeting and seeing the response from the architect and reviewing the environmental assessment and the mitigation efforts, I think that this is a well-crafted project. I think it should move forward. I know that there's going to be impacts on the neighborhood. I know that the neighborhood is evolving. We're in a situation, sort of more globally speaking, we're in a situation where we have state housing demands supported by housing availability laws that we're obligated to adhere to and recognize. We have regional housing requirements throughout the area that need to be met. Burlingame itself has a housing obligation that we're required to recognize and meet. And so our efforts here are to make for well-planned and as thoughtful housing projects as we can, but we have an obligation to consider these projects, and we have an obligation to consider additional housing in our communities. And if there's a way for the people of the state of California to find some mechanism for population reductions, then I'd be glad to hear it. But unless we find that, we can't implement different policy. We have to move forward with some housing policy that meets the demands and recognizes our obligations. I think well-crafted projects like this are the ones that we have to consider, and we put together a general plan as a community that considers where we want to consider additional housing projects, and this is one of those areas. So I'm accepting of the environmental assessment in terms of the mitigation. I think I can make the findings for the conditional use permit, for the alternative parking design. And I think that the project is well designed, and from a design review standpoint, I can accept the project as it's proposed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Larios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a great project. This was before my time, but I must commend the architect. I love the massing, the vertical and horizontal lines, and how it works with the adjacent buildings. I think it has a very humble massing for a 6-story building. I think it's going to look great. And as Mr. Terone has mentioned, it's crucial for us to meet as a city our housing allocations, but even more crucial to meet the housing obligations of the people of Burlingame. This allows families to come in, to have more neighbors, and their city to thrive. So I see all the findings here present, and I would very much like to see this project move forward. I only have one comment, and that's the community benefits. I'm really ecstatic over the fact that one of the community benefits is the zero net energy. I think that is very, very important and crucial with the climate crisis going on right now. But the one that I'm just a little bit, it's just a little perplexing to me is the Plaza itself, just because of what I think Plaza should look like and what the definition is. But it seems like we are being consistent and adhering to what we have from the city standpoint. And so on that note, I'm totally fine with it, but I would like to look at that in the future before, all these other projects start doing plazas, and I think we really need to have a discussion about that. But otherwise, this project is absolutely great. 90 units, very much so welcome in our community. So yeah, that's my comment. I think I can make all the findings here.
Thank you. I'd kind of like to piggyback on Commissioner Torontis a little bit in that I don't think it is ours to stop projects. It is ours to help steward them through the process and to try to make them the best that we can within our community. And when we talk about affordability doesn't happen if we go with a much lower density on this project site. If we don't go 6 stories, we don't get 90 units. And if we don't get 90 units, we're not going to get the 5 affordable units. And we're not going to get more housing in the community, which is the state mandate right now. But I do think that the project team has done a good job of adding more parking than is required. If you do look at the staff report, based on the criteria that they would be required to have 95 spaces. And here they are providing 145 spaces. So it's not that they're doing the absolute minimum and trying to do no parking. They're trying to do a good job and recognize that there will be some units that will have more cars than others. So hopefully this does not add to the parking problem that is already there that's caused by other projects that don't have the required parking. So again, I agree, I can make the findings. I feel it's a well-designed and well-crafted project. And I don't have any concerns with the parking with the tandem and the stackers. And I think that is a good solution to try and increase that. And I think the community benefits are there for us. So I would like to see the project move forward as well. In the meantime, we've gotten a few more hands up. Planning Manager Heron, do you want to go first, or do you want me to call on Commissioner Gall and pick you up at the end?
Sure. No, if I could go first, if you don't mind, through the chair.
Yes.
If your desire, or if you're leaning towards making a motion for an approval, we just wanted to make sure that you included the environmental review, which is CEQA section 15183, which is the streamline environmental review. So make sure we include that. The other thing I wanted to note also is that you do have Dr. Dennis Nye, who has raised his hand on the public side. If your desire is to let him in and make a comment, you should.
Did we get Mr. Yepes, anything from him?
Let me quickly check here. No, we did not receive anything.
Okay, I'm going to let Commissioner Gall go first, and then I will revisit.
Yeah, thank you. I tend to agree with the neighbors that are going to be impacted by the parking and all the traffic. I know that there have been studies, although we only really get the result of it in the initial study. We don't actually get to see the study, or I haven't seen the study myself. But with the school there, I do have some concerns about that traffic, especially right at school time, like 8 o'clock and 3 in the afternoon. That I don't know if they've been evaluated in the traffic study. So I'm still a little leery about it. And unfortunately, sometimes we find out about these things after the fact. I'm not saying we shouldn't be building more housing. Of course, as has been stated previously, that's kind of the state mandate here. Although I think that with all the ADUs and additional housing that we're building, I think we're probably doing very well. So I do have some concerns about that traffic that's going to be there, and it's going to impact that neighborhood. The other one and I had spoken about it before, was the water management plan. I know that there is a new water management plan, although we have not yet seen it. The conclusion that they came to was that it would be fine, but I, for one, would like to see that water management plan if we can get copies of it. Just so, I understand we can't read absolutely everything, and we have to rely on some of the people that make some of these decisions for us, and we have to go along with that. But at the same time, I'd like to have that information available to us at some point. The project overall, I think, is a good looking project. But again, I do have some concerns about the traffic. But I think that they've done a good job with the parking. I'm more concerned about coming in and out than having parking spaces.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Gall. Catherine?
Yes, I just wanted to note, respond to Commissioner Gall's concern, and note that the transportation impact analysis was done by Hexagon Transportation, and we do have some staff from Hexagon that are here and are available to answer any questions specifically about that intersection. I can say that given the use of the existing 2 buildings that are currently occupying the site, and then the change to residential, resulted in 56 fewer daily trips based upon the TIA. And as far as that intersection goes, I would have to defer to the Hexagon staff. If we want, we can bring them in because they are available. But they did take a look at, I think it was the Ogden and Truesdale intersection. And with the project, that currently it's a level of service C at that intersection, and there was no change to the delays at that intersection. I don't know, I know you mentioned a specific time of day. Obviously, I would say when school's starting or getting out, it's going to be, that I'm not sure if that C represents the worst or not. But if we want to talk more about it, we do have staff from Hexagon that can probably answer your questions a little bit in more depth than I could.
So Commissioner Gall, is that something, should we reach out to that Hexagon person and get
I wouldn't
invited in?
Mind. I wouldn't mind if they're available.
Okay, well, Ruben, maybe if you know who that is and can let them in, maybe I'll let Vice Chair Loftus go real quick here, and then we can revisit Commissioner Gall's questions to the Hexagon rep.
Chair Schmidt, just to interject really quickly, to allow them to talk. I mean, we had closed the public hearing, so this is, we are going outside of staff on this call, so it would be advisable to just open back up the public hearing at the end of this.
Okay, so as soon as I finish with Vice Chair Loftus, I'll do that, and then we can have that conversation. And then we can also address the attendee that is also out there.
I was just going to make a couple of points that have already been made. There are 145 parking spaces here. I'm not sure how many would be enough, but the science says this is enough. And I would also like to hear the consultant speak about the traffic, and the science there, it appears, says that the traffic will be enough. The point that Commissioner Tronas made earlier is a really important one. You know, if somebody can figure out how to, you know, control the growing population of California, then by all means, you know, figure that out. But I don't see it happening. That's not the way the world works. You know, a big earthquake and we could see some people leaving, I suspect, but we don't want that. You know, and given that we can't do anything about it, then we have to deal with the facts in front of us. There has to be a place for folks to live, and we need to be smart about the projects that we shepherd through, and all we can do is follow the science. So I'd love to hear the traffic consultant talk about the levels of service at the intersections at the ends. Thanks.
Great, thank you, sir. So then I'm going to go ahead and reopen the public hearing. And Ruben, do we know the right person to let in and invite to respond?
Yes, Gary Black is here from Hexagon. So go ahead, Gary.
Yes, thank you. Gary Black with Hexagon. I'd also invite Jocelyn from our team to join in if she could be let into the meeting, because she has some of the specific numbers. I could just talk more generally about how the traffic study was done. Traffic studies are done following standard procedures that are established by the city. And we use what we call our standard reference works to determine, to estimate how much traffic would be generated by a new project like this. And based on all those sources, we can say that the traffic in the area would not noticeably change as a result of this project being built. We typically look at daily traffic, but we also look at the morning peak and we look at the afternoon peak, which are typically the commute peaks. The morning peak does overlap with the school drop-off time. We don't typically analyze the time of pickup from schools because that occurs earlier in the afternoon when the other traffic, like commute traffic, is not so much out on the street. I will note that if you go to a school immediately before or after school, you'll see a lot of traffic. I mean, everyone's seen that. It can be fairly chaotic. However, those time periods are usually very, very short. And this particular project probably, would only add 1 or 2 trips, if any, during those time periods, just before and after school. So if Jocelyn's available, if you could, Jocelyn, tell the actual trip generation estimated for the project, I think that would be helpful.
Sure. So as Catherine mentioned earlier, because the project would be replacing 2 existing uses that are still occupied, the project actually would generate less trips when you take those trip credits away. So they would be actually reducing traffic on those streets. So given that the project would replace those 2 buildings, the AM peak hour trips actually result in a negative 41 trips, and the PM peak hour trips result in a negative 40 trips. So we're not expecting that this project would actually add any trips to these intersections in the surrounding area.
Commissioner Gall or any, oh, yep, there you go, you're up.
Yeah. So are you anticipating that a certain percentage of the people are going to be walking to the BART station or riding their bikes, or are we assuming that everyone that lives in the building would be driving?
Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I'll just answer that. The city does have a requirement for trip reduction that would apply to the project, and that could be achieved by people walking. Jocelyn can say whether we actually assumed anyone would walk, but we certainly hope that they would, because this is the type of location that's within walking distance of the BART and Caltrain station. So in that sense, if you're looking for a good place to put maybe some higher density housing, close to that transit service is a very good location. So Jocelyn, did we apply a reduction for walking?
We did not. The whole estimate is only based on vehicle trips right now. We didn't apply any reductions for walking.
So that's probably an overestimate, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Say?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I had also that same question, but also want to understand if the trip count for the current buildings, if that was controlled for a certain time of day, and how that applies to the trip count generated by the new structure for those peak hours in that especially in the morning, the rush hour time frame.
But the time periods that we analyze typically in traffic studies are the commute hours, because that's when the traffic on the streets is the highest. I should mention that all this analysis was done pre-COVID. So, we were looking at what the volumes used to be, and both for what's generated by the existing buildings and also what's out on the street. So the time periods that we look at are 2 hours in the morning, the commute hours, generally 7 to 9 a.m., and then 2 hours in the afternoon, 4 to 6 p.m. are typical study hours, when traffic volume is highest.
Could I ask another question? I know this can get very complicated in analyzing traffic patterns and such, but when you are factoring in the early morning traffic associated with the school, does that also take into account the number of pedestrians that are crossing the streets and in the middle of the blocks and such as well around a school?
Well, yeah, this does get pretty complicated, Commissioner. We do account for pedestrians in terms of the effect that has on the overall traffic flow. We do not estimate, for example, an increase in pedestrians that would come from the project, if that's your question.
More about
we also consider pedestrians if we're going to look at a particular location for improvements. We will consider, what's needed to accommodate pedestrians as well as vehicles. However, this, as I think Jocelyn pointed out, this project is expected to have, to create no change whatsoever in terms of the traffic in that area. And therefore, we were not recommending that there would be any changes to the road network.
And then lastly, did you didn't factor in people who may be walking from the building, but what about bicyclists? People who may opt to ride a bike to the BART station or train station?
Well, again, we use what we call a worst case analysis, where we didn't assume that anyone would ride bikes or walk, even though we know they will. But even without that, even with that worst case assumption, this project still would generate less traffic than the buildings are already there. But certainly we would expect, cars, people walking and cycling. We would expect that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Larios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just following Commissioner Say's question, that's where I was headed, is that there's from what I my takeaway is that the study shows that there's actually going to be a reduction in traffic. And not only that, since you did the study pre-pandemic, as you mentioned, this is most likely an overestimate. And furthermore, I think that the building there in place, because this is going to be a lot merger, probably generates more traffic than what, having what the new structure in place is going to generate. So I don't know if everything I said is factual, but that's kind of the way that I am understanding it. Could you kind of flesh that out and see where I'm right, where I'm wrong, see if I understood you correctly?
Yes, your understanding is correct.
I would add, Commissioner Larios, that on page 3-105 of the CEQA 15183 checklist, what Hexagon has summarized for us is also in the CEQA document.
Catherine, before you go away, does that particular spot also state how many existing parking spaces we have for the use that's there?
I don't see that right offhand, but the appendices that has all the full counts and all the background data may have that in the appendices for the CEQA document.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but maybe it isn't, that we're changing from a higher density, higher traffic use to a lower density use. It just looks bigger.
I think some of it is the fact that some of the uses on site are medical offices, which generate quite a big turnaround throughout the day.
Yeah. So, okay. I think that was a good use of time. Any other questions for Jocelyn or Gary at this time, team? Okay. Before I close the public hearing, I'm going to go back and can we let Dr. Nagal in? Okay, sir, if you'd like to unmute yourself, I appreciate you waiting patiently, and you've got your time. Dr. Nagai? If you're there and you want to unmute yourself, now is your time.
Through the chair, while he figures out how to unmute himself, Mr. Yep, who was trying to log on earlier, did submit a public comment. So perhaps I can read that now.
Oh,
go ahead.
I think we have the
Dennis from 2755 Summit Drive, and my neighbor lives at 2752 Summit Drive. I'm sorry for coming on so late.
Mr. Nye,
yeah,
we're not quite there at that project yet. So
okay, I'll just hold on until we get to that project then. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, we still have probably 3 or maybe 4 or 5 more projects before we get there. So be patient and we'll look for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have Laurent.
Yeah, so let's see, Laurent, I believe he is the applicant for the next item at 1208 Burlingame Avenue. And Mr. Voitan already spoke earlier.
Yep. Okay.
Let me go ahead and read Mr. Yep's comments.
Great.
I oppose the projected project at 1814 to 1820 Ogden Drive. I live next door to the project at 1838 Ogden Drive. I think ideal height and number of condos at 4 floors and 45 units. We don't need a public space. Burlingame represents, to me, quality and quiet neighborhoods. 90 units is too much. The proposed project at 1868 to 1870 El Camino Real had 6 floors and 90 units. Our quiet neighborhood would be destroyed. And again, that's from Michael Yep.
Okay, great. Then we will reclose the public hearing. And I think, is everybody, all the commissioners, is there any further comment that anybody wishes to make at this time? Then do we have a motion? And let's see, we have a complicated motion. So, Assistant City Attorney, do you want to break this up for us so that we do it appropriately?
Sure, you can, it might be easiest to make a motion for the approval of the environmental review. And then to do the rest, you can make a separate motion after for everything else that's listed on your staff report. You can almost, if you agree with it, of course, read it as part of your motion.
Well, now, are we not making a recommendation to City Council on the lot merger as opposed to approving it?
I apologize. Yes, you're making the recommendation for that. Yes.
So maybe we start with that one and then move on to the environmental review and then hit the rest?
Sure. That sounds like a great plan, Chair.
Okay. Do I have a brave soul on the recommendation?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city council that they approve the lot merger.
I'll second Vice Chair Loftus.
Okay, so we have a motion with Vice Chair Loftus and a second by Commissioner Larios. Any comments or concerns? None. So we vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Toronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-0-1. On to our second one would be the environmental review.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the environmental review in accordance with CEQA.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus and a second by Commissioner Toronis. Any comments? Nope, so let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Toronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-0-1. So now I think we can string together the design review, conditional use, community benefits, condominium, and parking. Correct?
Team measure. Thank you, Chair.
Come on, Vice Chair Loftus.
I'm trying to
Get
figure
another
out.
one.
I move that we approve the design and the conditional use permit. I can make the findings for the conditional use permit for tandem parking and mechanical puzzle stackers and the community benefits bonuses for tier 3 projects.
Second.
In the condominium map.
Oh, do you want to add that to it?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'll add the tentative condominium map.
Second.
Great. So we have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus and a quicker motion by Commissioner Say. And any comments? Okay, let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus, Commissioner Toronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say.
Aye.
And Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-0-1. So an action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. Okay. Moving on to item 8C, 1208 Burlingame Avenue. If you are the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Okay, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for a conditional use permit for a full service food establishment in an existing commercial building at 1208 Burlingame Avenue, zoned BAC. In 2012, the restriction on the number of full service food establishments was removed, allowing new full service food establishments in any location within the BAC district. The subject tenant space is currently vacant, but was most recently occupied by the North Face, a retail clothing store. The proposed food establishment, which is called Maison Elysée, I hope I pronounced that correctly, it's a French restaurant, will contain customer seating, a kitchen, a display case, storage areas, and restrooms. The proposed food establishment will have approximately 255 square feet of indoor seating area. The proposed restaurant would serve breakfast and brunch, lunch, and afternoon meals. In his letter dated September 16th, the applicant notes that Maison Elysée offers a full menu with teas, Italian and French style coffees, savory items, salads, sandwiches, as well as baked goods, pastries, and desserts. With this application, there are no changes proposed to the front facade of the building, so the existing storefront system will remain, other than new signage and perhaps repainting the front facade of the building, which does not require commercial design review. Food establishment uses located on the first floor within the parking sector of the downtown plan are exempt from vehicle parking requirements. The subject property is located within the parking sector, so no additional parking is required for the proposed use. Suggested findings for the conditional use permit are found on page 3 of your staff report. That concludes my summary of the staff report. The applicant, I believe, has been let in already, and he can certainly add additional information. But if you have any questions for staff, I'd be happy to take those now. Oh, you're on mute, Chair Schmidt.
Sorry, I was trying to be quiet. Do we have any questions for staff at this point? Seeing none, then I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. And would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything you'd like to add about your project? I think you're on.
Hi, good evening. Honored to be attending your commission meeting today. My name is Laurent Perret, I'm French. I came to the US in 2011 and I was working in a technology company, and over my past and prior experience, I ran retail, food and non-food, and I was also a CFO of Sony Consumer Electronics Europe. And our story, I'm the sole owner of Maison Elysée, and we have 3 children, 6, 10, and 11. So our story is that when we came here, we were looking for a good baguette and a good coffee and beautiful dessert. And while we were searching for where to live, we never find a beautiful place. So I started to think about establishing Maison Elysée. Maison means house, and Elysée is a warm wind of the Equator region. So the idea was to create a warm place where people feel at home and welcome and enjoy the space and the product and what we would be serving. So we are looking for unique design. We are using a high-end material like a marble, bronze, against to make the place cozy and friendly for our customer. An important point, our core value of Maison Elysée is humility, respect, and sharing. We are humble every day. Every Today, we believe it's a new day and we must make sure we are doing the best product. We are baking every day and all of our products are completely fresh with mostly Italian and French ingredients. In terms of the full dining service, we are offering from the 8 o'clock until 2 o'clock a full savory menu for breakfast, brunch, and lunch. In the afternoon, we are offering a tea menu and desserts and some savory such as the quiches or croque monsieur, which is a typical French. In terms of health, we are extremely sensitive to health. We are going way beyond. So for instance, every customer, we clean the screen today. So there is not a single customer until we clean the POS because we are very sensitive to health. In the bathroom, we are cleaning the bathroom every 30 minutes because it's also an area of risk. And I think we're going well beyond the requirements. In terms of how we fit, I believe Burlingame is an amazing street. This is for me, this is the only street that is close to some Neuilly area in Paris. With the furniture you put, the flooring that you put on the pavements is unique. I think this is the most unique street in all the cities that I'm visiting in the Bay Area. And I believe our high-end quality fit perfectly with the story and the culture of a Burlingame. And I believe it will provide Burlingame citizens a very strong and unique experience. And finally, my last point is I believe that the product that we are bringing are unique. There is no in Burlingame very high-end pastry or savory offering. We are not a star restaurant, but the cakes that we're doing are at the level of the best pastries you would find in Paris. I think that is all from my side. I don't know if there are any comments.
Great, thank you for that explanation and sharing your story. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Larios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci, Monsieur Loin. I really appreciate you bringing this forward to us. I'm curious about the bronze fixtures. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. But you've kind of run me through very eloquently of how the restaurant's going to look. But I'm just curious about the bronze fixtures. And can you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so if you look at our case, so most of the American stores have a metallic and a shiny, and with bronze, you bring the warmth and the elegance. So that's why every detail is important to me. Our table are oak with enamel, and neither enamel is very easy to find to make in California because it's only 100 years old or 50 years old. Whereas in Europe, it's maybe 2000 years old. And the bronze making, there is one gentleman in the San Carlos area that is the only one that I found that is able to sold bronze because California doesn't have. But it's the small detail, but it just reflects on how specific and peculiar we are in both in terms of the customer experience, in terms of the design of the store and the making of the product.
Thank you very much for walking me through that. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Tronis.
Yes, thank you, Laurent. I appreciate the presentation. Just a couple of questions. In the staff report, there's mention of weekday operations, but then in your use application chart, am I correct in assuming that you'll be open on weekends as well?
That's right.
And will that operation be 8 to 6 p.m.?
That's right. That's right.
Weekdays?
Yeah, I think this is typical what fits the city of Burlingame.
Okay.
I think this is good timing for us.
But if I want to get a late night pastry, I've got to go somewhere else, though, unfortunately.
You can order in advance and we'll arrange delivery for you, sir.
Okay. My only other question is, how does the size of this operation, just in terms of the actual physical store, compare with your Mountain View store?
Similar.
It's very
The-
similar?
It's very similar. I don't know if you visited our Mountain View store.
No, I haven't.
I invite everybody. I have 9 customers potentially.
Okay,
It's a similar size. The kitchen is a little bit bigger in
Mhm.
case Mountain View, because we are producing mostly here. We will do some cake in Birmingham, but the most of the production of the oven will be done in Mountain View, and
Okay.
we'll bring to Birmingham
so it sounds like your operation will scale successfully then here to this store.
with the help of everybody. I also forgot to mention something important. We went through COVID because of the community, and the community gave us 100 times what we could expect. And I think it's a very important point. Maison Alizée is a very strong community activity, and we have been through the COVID only thanks to them, and I must thank them every day.
I'm glad you were able to make it through. Thank you. And I appreciate you, you looking at into our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I only have one question, and it actually stems from my entire household. We're just wondering how quickly you can open.
As quickly as I get my plans approved.
Thank you.
Okay, well, then we'll move it along. I'm not seeing any other comments here, and I'm not, oh, I do see a hand up in the audience. Ms. Pfaff? Can we let her in and? Okay, Jennifer, you're up.
Bienvenue, Laurent. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to welcome you here. We have a great community, and this is really very exciting. So good luck. And you're moving into a really beautiful building. Architecturally, it's very beautiful. So we welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners. Vice Chair Loftus.
So I'm gonna jump right into it. I think it's very easy to find the to find the findings required by the conditional use permit, that the proposed food establishment will not be detrimental to the city's objective of promoting pedestrian-oriented retail activity in this commercial district, and is in compliance with the general plan. So I'm going to move that we approve the conditional use permit.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus and a second by Commissioner Tronis. Any further comments? Fabulous, let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmid.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-0-1. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. Okay. Moving on then to, let's see, that concludes our regular action items, correct? Because 8D has been continued. So moving on to then item 9A, 1120 Summer Avenue. Would the If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project?
Mr. Chair, again, I'll be recused on this item. Our firm is the architect for the project.
Great, thank you. Okay, seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
This is an application for design review and special permit for declining height envelope. The applicant is proposing a first and second story addition to the existing single story house, expansion of the existing attached carport, and conversion of the original detached garage to an accessory dwelling unit. The total floor area will be 2,829 square feet, or 2,833 square feet is the maximum allowed. 4 bedrooms are proposed, 2 parking spaces are required on site, 1 covered space is provided in the attached carport, and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. The applicant is also requesting a special permit for encroachment into the declining height envelope along the right side by 77 square feet. All other zoning code requirements have been met. Staff would like to note that there was 1 received after forwarded to the commission via email. That concludes my presentation. I'm available if there are any questions of staff.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Hi, I'm Julianne of Darling Toronto's Architecture, and I'll be representing the project at 1120 Summer. I believe the owners, Mark and Katie, are possibly also on the call. So the existing site is a single family residence with a detached garage. This project proposes a first floor addition and a new second floor addition in a front to back gabled roof with dormers to reduce its impact on neighbors in a craftsman style to blend in with the neighborhood, and is also typical of other large craftsman homes. The project also converts an existing unpermitted conversion, an existing detached garage with unpermitted work into compliance with the current ADU ordinance. So as the commission knows, the scope is administrative only, but I feel like we have to address it since it's in the drawing set. So this project also includes an addition to the carport, which is in alignment with residential parking patterns. We note this in our application for special permit to the declining height envelope. Typically, we don't see front to back gables stepping in at the sides, and instead we are reducing the mass by springing the second floor addition from the existing floor top plate. And so the addition effectively appears as an attic. I do want to note a correction that we need to make to our special permit application. That'll be done prior to the action meeting. The application currently states in item 3 that the parking is in a detached garage. It is not, it's in the carport. We'd also like to note that we are proposing limited site work. And so the existing fence lines at the side property lines will remain, and we'll also identify the 3 new landscaping trees that are required. And so I will pass this off to the owners, Mark and Katie. I'm available to answer any questions you have after. Thanks.
Thank you. You're up if you want to say some more.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. My wife, Katie, and I have resided in Burlingame since 1996. Just wanted to let you know we don't intend to sell this home. Our intent is to, remodel it and hold it as a long-term family investment, hopefully passing it on to our kids, of which we have 4. The youngest is currently in 8th grade at BIS. As Julianne mentioned, the garage was previously converted by the prior owner apparently without permits. So we want to legalize that and bring it into compliance with the ADU requirements, as well as add the square footage that you see on the plans. We have communicated with the neighbor who has expressed some concern over the fencing on the east side of the property, and we've let them know. And we'll let you know that we have no intention of doing anything with that fencing. We're going to leave it as is, and we will add the required trees to comply with the landscaping requirements. So again, thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for the applicant or the owner at this time? Okay, seeing none, then I'll go ahead and look for any public comment. I'm not seeing any hands out in the public. Ruben, do we have any chats or emails on this one?
Yes, we did receive one email, so let me go ahead and read that. This is from James Panuto and Claudia Steenberg at 1116 Summer Avenue. Why are they asking for a special permit for declining head envelope? What does that mean? And how does that affect our home at 1116 Summer Avenue next door? Privacy concerns, height overlooking our property, proximity of overwhelming structure, 30 feet high, reduced daylight in our house, and higher electric bills. Elimination of another single-story, single-family bungalow, upgraded by the previous owner and improved upon by the current owner, and rented out for the above market rate, $5,500 a month, not a bad income. For a 1920s home, the building is in sound condition. We need to keep these buildings as they are for a saner, less frantic, less intense lifestyle for those who wish to live a simpler life in an ever more complicated and greedier environment. What bothers us the most is that the owners do not live in the neighborhood. They seek to capitalize on our block with no local connection to our local neighborhood. It is a blatant carpetbagging operation sanctioned by the city and state to gain financially at the expense of the powerless. The homeowners living in our neighborhood who want to improve their living space is more acceptable and welcoming than any speculative outsider looking for a fast return on their investment. These speculators ultimately drive up the cost of land. It is our desire not to replace the existing white picket fence because it provides an open feel as opposed to a 7-foot solid wall of wood. Also, it is desired to keep the remaining solid fence as is with no additional trellis topping. Before deconstruction or modification of the existing structures, contractor or subcontractors must abide by California Code of Regulations, Title 8, Section 1532.1 LEAD. A notice shall be posted on the premise, an abatement of lead hazards notification to inform the neighbors that work is being conducted to abate lead-based paint or lead hazards in or on the structures. Again, this is from James Panuto and Claudia Steenberg, 1116 Summer Avenue. Those are all the comments that we received via email.
I also have one public comment. To the Planning Commission, I live on Summer Avenue, house since 1994, resident of Burlingame since 1977. The small, quaint town of Burlingame is turning into an overpopulated, ugly city. Now on our little street, yet another 2-story home is being built. It seems all of you rubber stamp approve on just about anything these days. There are many new, huge, ugly apartments going up, new ugly business buildings going up. There used to be a time when you were all very strict about building up and out and all over. Those days are gone. There is nothing I can do or say because the zoning laws are on your side. So build, build, build. In short, my wife and I are totally against the new build at 1120 Summer Avenue. Please don't respond. I just want to voice my displeasure with the decision to approve this build and all of the other monstrosities that you're allowing to be built. Pete Scapazzi.
Chair Schmid, we also did just receive another public comment email, if I can go ahead and read that.
Yes.
This is from Jennifer Foth. I think this is a really gorgeous project. Well done.
Okay. Then with that, I'm going to go ahead and
Chair
close
Schmidt,
the-
Mr. Intreri has his hand up. If you wish, you could let him add any additional comments.
Okay.
Thank you. I will be very brief. I have to take offense, unfortunately, to the analogy to the carpet bagging quality of this project. Some of you know me, some of you perhaps don't. My family is deeply embedded in this community. I served on the Burlingame School Board for 12 years. And we remain embedded and committed to this community. So we are not profiteering. We're trying to build a better family home for people who want to come to Burlingame, and also which I can pass down to my kids. Thank you.
Okay. Julianne, your hand is up. Do we have some more from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the project does include a new ADU. The existing unit did not have a kitchen, and so there will be an additional unit available on this site for rental. And of course, after this project is approved, it will go to the planning department and be built fully in accordance with the building code.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close our public hearing and move back to the commission. Comments, commissioners? Commissioner Larios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just kind of wanted to just bring something to the attention of maybe staff or Julie, who is here. So that first comment, they did have a question about declining height envelope. I feel fair that if we answer that, it'd be great. Otherwise, I think I didn't hear other very factual things in those comments, but I did hear a very direct question on what is that. So maybe if we could just answer that question for the public, I think it'd be great.
Okay, great. Vice Chair Loftus. Are you going to answer that, or are you?
No, I'm not going to answer that. I did want to sort of reinforce what Jennifer Pfaff said about this project. It's a very nice little project, and I understand there's a lot of heat surrounding it, and I'm trying my best to bite my tongue, given some of the things that were said. I think it's a beautiful project. I think one of the things it does that several projects around town have done very successfully is the slope away from the road, as opposed to a frontal gable facing the road, has a huge impact on the project's address to the street and its apparent mass. And I think if you look around town at many of those projects, we've seen several of them now executed very successfully. If you look around town at some of those, they all do a very good job of nestling into the neighborhood, I think, in my opinion. So I think it's a very well crafted project, and it's a nice little house, but this will be a nice bigger house in my view.
Okay, Commissioner Say.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with what Commissioner Loftus just said. And I want to also piggyback on that and say that I think that the second story addition has been so nicely crafted. It's very modest. You almost don't feel that there's a second story on the home. And I like how that's been treated. I also wanted to respond to one of the early commenters from the public. This looks to me, this house is not a complete reconstruction tear down. It's actually been very carefully planned around an existing floor plan and expanded along the back and of course upstairs for a second story addition. I think it's very nicely designed and very, very nice job. And I think it'll be a nice addition to the area.
Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I won't go on for a long time, but I really appreciate that they are saving the older house and keeping it. I think it's going to help to make this addition blend into the neighborhood, that you're not scraping it and starting all over. And I always like to see, if you can, as Commissioner said, work around the old house. And I think they've done a really good job doing that.
Great. Okay, I'm going to try and tackle the declining height a little bit. When I first saw that, I was a little concerned too. I'm always trying to be cognizant of how our second story addition and homes address their neighbors. I don't think that anybody wants a big monster home overlooking their property either. And when you look at this only in 2 dimensions and you only look at the front elevation, you go, wow, they've totally blown the declining height. Well, but when you really think about this in 3 dimensions and how well the roof line springs off the first floor and not the second floor, there's very little of the volume of this house that is actually breaking the declining height envelope. And, you know, one of the challenges when we make these regulations is we can't make one regulation fit every situation. And we've had many of these where the house goes, you know, has a roof that goes front to back, and you're not just going to chop it to make the declining height work. The architecture works best the way it is done, and it addresses a very nice volume to this house. And like many of the other commissioners have noted, it actually isn't as big as one might think. I think that the way that the second story addition has been designed, it will blend in. It is much lower, and it's not a 2-story wall up against the neighbors. So I can appreciate the effort that was put into this one, and hope that when it is completed, it will fit into the neighborhood as nicely as I expect. With that, I would like to see this project move forward as well. So do we have a motion? We have the design review as well as then the declining height to address.
Mr. Chair, I can make the findings for the approval of the declining height envelope that's required by the architectural response here. And I move that we approve the project with the findings in the staff report.
I'll second that motion.
Great. We have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus, a second by Commissioner Say. Any further comment?
Yes, Chair Schmid, this is not up for action. This is a design review study item. So your options would be to place it on the consent calendar or regular action.
Wow. Vice Chair Loftus.
Well, sorry about that. I got all caught up. I think this is a great candidate for the consent calendar. Personally, I don't know what you would do to this house to improve it at this point. We might pick nits, but I wouldn't want to do that. I think it's well done. So I move that we bring this back on the consent calendar.
And I'll second that motion again.
Great. So amended by Vice Chair Loftus and seconded again by Commissioner Say. Any further discussion? Then let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6001. Congratulations. Moving on to item 9B, 2701 Hillside Drive. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Okay, seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
This is an application for design review and special permit for building height. The applicant is proposing to demolish an existing 1-story house and detached garage with living space above to build a new two-story single-family dwelling and new detached garage. The total floor area will be 3,165 square feet, or 3,167 square feet is the maximum allowed. 4 bedrooms are proposed, 2 parking spaces are required on site. 1 covered space is provided in the detached garage, and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. The applicant is also requesting a special permit for the proposed building height of 31 feet 6 inches. All other zoning code requirements have been met. This concludes my presentation. I'm available if there are any questions of staff.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to open up the public hearing. And will the applicant please come forward, state your name, and anything else you want to add about your project?
Yeah, hi, James Chu, Chu Design Associates. This is a private resident, and it's actually a very straightforward project. The special permit is very typical because the lot configuration. If you look at the elevation, we actually graded down about 4 feet, but it's still about 8 feet plus from the sidewalk. And as far as the flat roof, at the garage, the owner is thinking about maybe putting some solar panels, and that's all I have to say, actually, because the fact that this is design review hearing, I'd like to hear your comments.
Great, thank you, James. Questions for the applicant, Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, hi, James. A couple quick questions. Your skylights, I assume, are going to be glass, so they'll be flat as opposed to acrylic bubbles.
Of course, yes.
Okay. I had a question. It says natural cedar shake roof. Did you guys think about slate? I'm seeing the metal attic vents and just the style of the house, and I'm wondering, would slate fit in better, or did you guys do that?
Or maybe composition. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's the higher relief presidential or something.
Sure.
It's just I'm just not. I mean, I'm not. It's not a deal breaker. Maybe like to hear from the other commissioners, but a cedar shake roof to me doesn't seem to fit on this house. But
yeah, I wish I could make that decision for for the homeowner to use slate.
Yeah.
But I need to ask them.
Yeah, bounce it off them. Then the only other question I had is on the hillside drive elevation. You have wood access doors underneath the stairway, and I'm looking at the landscape plan, and it looks like there's planting there. My concern is that it's going to have street frontage, and those types of doors. There's a couple of projects in town where it slipped by, and those you can still see them. They just don't look as finished. I'm wondering, will the landscaping cover those doors?
We definitely could add more landscaping to cover.
As long as the height's there, I know that the doors aren't going to be full height, but just a utility door on the face of a building. I mean, I think it's a good looking building, but we've talked about this before. And when you have a corner lot, you've got really 2 fronts that you need to design. So that's the only, part in that elevation that looks like it might be out of place.
Yeah, perhaps we can reduce that door from 2 to 1 door.
Yeah, or even like I say, if you need that much, that's fine, as long as that landscaping would grow tall enough to cover it. I'm looking at the landscape plan. It looks like there's plenty of vegetation there. I just don't know if it's going to be ground cover or if it'll be a shrub that grows up high enough to shield that or screen that from the street.
Okay, we'll look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Say.
Yes, thank you. I had the exact same 2 comments as Commissioner Gall. I was just wondering, James, if you wanted to think about how, because this is a street facing view, so that's pretty important. And the house is developed very nicely. But on the hill, on the Benito side, you show some railings, balustrade, wondering if maybe that detail can be shaping the front of that patio on Hillside, and that would help to shield those doors, as well as kind of give, you know, an area of transition between the patio to the landscaping potentially.
That's a good idea. I definitely will look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Then I had one question for you. On the right side elevation, I guess the not hillside, but yeah.
The ugly side.
Well, the side that's facing your neighbor. Have you guys had a chance to coordinate with the neighbor as far as window view corridors and things like that?
Honestly, not really. But it's our, but the fact that, you know, we actually graded the lot 4 feet lower than theirs, I think the window will somehow offset in height. And when you really look at these windows are not like the huge window or the bedroom window. So I really don't see any impact.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if the neighbors are present to voice their concern, or, I mean, I'm sure there's ways to mitigate if they.
Yeah, it just may be worth sending them a set of, you know, of elevations so that they're giving a chance to look at it before the next meeting, where they then say, I've never seen it, and it's looking into my daughter's bedroom, you know.
Correct.
That's nobody wants to hear that at the next meeting.
Sure. Thank you.
So anyway, okay, thank you, sir. It looks like Vice Chair Loftus has his hand up.
I had the same two concerns as Commissioner Gall and Commissioner Say, and I also have a concern. I want to make sure that the light fixtures that are the exterior light fixtures meet the lighting regulations for the city, that the cone of light is kept on the property.
Yes,
I
definitely.
I see this all over the place, even on some of the projects that we've recently approved. Somehow I've ended up with light fixtures that don't meet our regulations, and the light pollution is really not good. So yeah, please make sure that the light fixtures comply.
Understand. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for our questions of Mr. Chu. Let me look to see if there's anybody in the public. I'm not seeing any hands in the public. Any comments or emails?
Email submitted.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and move back to the commissioners. Comments?
I think we've, oh, I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand. I think we've covered them. I think that the major points that need to be addressed have been addressed. And I would move that we bring it back on regular action.
Okay, I'm going to hang on to your movement there. And Commissioner Torontos?
Well, I'll second the motion just for the sake of procedure. But by the way, in the way of comment, I had similar questions of fellow commissioners. One question on, you know, coordination with the neighbor on Hillside, and then also the roofing. I agree with Commissioner Gall that the cedar shakes seem a little off relative to the rest of the architecture. I think it could work with a high profile comp shingle roof, you know, but something besides the shake I think would be more appropriate. Otherwise, I think the architecture seems to fit in nicely for various reasons with the Hillside neighborhood. It kind of the way that it kind of climbs up the slope with the roof that reaches down to the first floor on the front along Benito is rather nice. The portico offers a nice formal entry, and the balustrades just kind of creeping their way down to the street. I think make for some nice architecture on that corner. And it has a similar feel and scale to the existing house, but with a more humble garage, which I think is a nice touch versus what's there. So I think it's a nice project and should move forward to action.
Great, unless we have other comments, then I have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus and a second by Commissioner Toronis. Last chance. Then let's see, we have the design review and then the special permit for the height. You want to clarify that just a little bit so that
Yes, I think given the upsloping lot, we approve many of these projects, and I think it makes perfect sense to provide this, to approve the special permit for height as well.
Great. Okay, can we have a vote?
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Toronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6001. Congratulations. Okay, moving on to item 9C, 2752 Summit Drive. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications with regard to this project? Okay, seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
This is an application for design review, hillside area construction permit, and special permit for attached garage. The applicant is resubmitting the proposed project to address concerns and suggestions by the commission for a previous project that was denied without prejudice on July 12, 2021. With this project, the applicant has eliminated encroachment into the declining height envelope and reduced the overall height of the building by 10 feet, 3 inches. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing one-story house and attached garage to build a new 2-story house with an attached garage. The total floor area will be 4,796 square feet, where 5,102 square feet is the maximum allowed. 4 bedrooms are proposed. 2 parking spaces are required on site. 2 covered parking spaces are provided in the attached garage, and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. All other zoning code requirements have been met. Staff would like to note that there was 1 received after forwarded to the commission via email. That concludes my presentation. I'm available if there are any questions of staff.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions of staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Hi, good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah, we have extensively worked with both neighbors on both sides of the house, and there's a letter of support from both of them that should have been registered with the commission. There was some previous recommendation about moving the ADU or shrinking the height of the house. Unfortunately, due to the lot and the structure of the lot and the easements, there was no way to keep the ADU. So basically, we had to sacrifice that and keep the profile of the house similar to the existing structure. We've also kept all the previous design review recommendations, and overall, the additional setbacks on the side should provide better privacy for both neighbors. I'll also work with them on the windows on the sides of the house to make sure that there is no overlook, even though the height remains the same. I'm hoping the commission approves this project and we can proceed to the next phase. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I just had one question. The height of the new house, could you tell us what that is in relation to the height of the existing house? Are they basically the same height, or is this going to be a little bit taller, or do you know?
Yeah, so most, Stefan, do you want to take it? Because I don't, it's more.
Yeah, I can take over. By removing ADU from scope of work, we lowered the house down to the level that in some instances it's below the current level of a roof. But it's in some parts it's a little bit higher. I would say about a couple feet at the tallest part. But we still keep the same size and footprint, and it's pretty much like within the envelope of existing house.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Seeing no further questions from the commissioners, then I will look at the attendees. Okay, so we have Dr. Nagai. Sorry if I butchered that, but it's your turn. If you want to unmute yourself, you're still on mute. There you go.
Hi, my name is Dennis, and I'm a neighbor, and I love walking on Summit Drive and climbing up the hill to see the wonderful view of all the beautiful houses on La Strada Court. I just want to make sure the house, I know maybe the house, I don't know how tall it is, if it's going to block the view when we see the house when we're walking up the hill. So I just want to make sure that we can still enjoy the view when we're walking up the hill.
Great, thank you.
And then also, I just want to know how long the construction will be, because my days off are during the weekday and I rest there, and I want to know like how much time I'm going to lose listening to the hammering and the bulldozing, because my parents had the same problem in Millbrae, and it was like 2 years of listening to all this hammering and I couldn't relax, and it was horrible for me.
I'm not sure that we can respond to that at this point, but I think that if you want to contact the planning department, they can give you a bit more information about hours and the rules of the construction rules that are applicable here.
Okay, those were just my two main things. Is I just want to be able to enjoy the view. I hope the house doesn't block the view of the wonderful valley view we have.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing any others. Ruben, do you have any emails or?
There were no emails submitted.
Okay, great. Then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Torres.
Yeah, thank you. I think that the revisions are nicely done. I think the project nestles into the site very similarly to the existing structure. This is vastly improved over what we saw previously. You know, I'm generally in favor of the project in terms of design review considerations. I can make the findings ultimately for the attached garage, because there is precedence in the neighborhood. You know, it'd be almost impossible to have a detached garage down some sloping driveway and a rear yard, et cetera. So I could tend towards those findings. So for me, I think the only issue is the hillside area construction permit. So I'd like to see the story poles erected just so that we could see how much of the existing house pokes up above the existing and how much of it is actually below or at the height of the existing and that sort of thing. And so that neighbors can see the view issues. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Loftus.
I agree with Commissioner Torres on all points. I think it's important that we do our due diligence here and put the story poles up just, you know, although we've been told that it's the same height or lower, but higher in a couple of spots. It would be nice for everyone to see where that is, how that actually works.
Okay, as much as in looking at this new design, I can appreciate the size reduction. I can appreciate the materials and the effort that has gone into this conversation with the planning department or planning commission and the owner to come to this solution. And I appreciate all the effort that was put into it. I feel, looking at what I can see, it looks like it will largely fit into the same box. But I do think that it is a good due diligence for the neighborhood to be able to know that as well, so that the public sees it, not just those of us who can read the prints. So I think that's a good idea. I'd like to see the project move forward, and I agree with the findings on the special permit for the attached garage. Is there any other comments? Do we have a motion? Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to bring this back on regular action when story poles have been erected for us to review.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and second that. So motion by Commissioner Tronis, seconded by myself. Any further comments?
I'm sorry, just one last comment. The story poles should be certified by a surveyor so that we have assurance of their accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's standard procedure.
Okay, so then can we have a vote?
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-0-1. Congratulations. Moving on to item 9D, 2312 Hillside Drive. Will the applicant or the applicant's representative please raise your hand and be ready so that you're prepared to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you turn on your video. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Okay, seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for design review and special permits for declining height envelope and detached garage length for a new 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage at 2312 Hillside Drive, zoned R1. The total proposed floor area would be 3,387 square feet, where 3,394 square feet is the maximum allowed on this lot. There would be a total of 4 bedrooms in the proposed house. 2 off-street parking spaces are required, one of which must be covered. The proposed detached garage provides 1 covered space, and 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. A special permit is being requested for the new detached garage length. 34 feet is proposed, where a special permit is required if a garage exceeds 28 feet in length. And lastly, the proposed second story encroaches into the declining height envelope along the left side by 63 square feet, which also requires approval of a special permit. All other zoning requirements have been met. That concludes my staff report. I'd be happy to take questions for staff, but the architect is also available. Thank you.
Great. Do we have any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Will the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else that you'd like to add about your project? Oh, there you go.
Hi. I'm Gary Diebel, the architect at Diebel and Company. I'm glad to be with you tonight and see everyone. The owners bought this house. It's a 1-story house. about a year ago, knowing that they need to rebuild it. It has some termite damage, and they wanted to create a larger house for their family and extended family. The site is essentially flat, but has some slope from the back left corner toward the opposite side and toward the front. The existing house is Spanish style, which attracted the owners to the site and wanted us to design a house that's similar to it, but one that could accommodate their family. For the planning of the site, we still have the driveway on the right side and the garage in the back right corner that comes out to about where the existing one is now. Also on the right side off the driveway is a ADU that's a little on the small side. And then with the design of the house in the front, it's 1 story stepping up. There's a living room on the left side. And then, that's the view. Entry in the center, there's an office that steps up a little more on the right side. And then we go up to, as we move back in the site, it goes up to the full 2 stories. The garage on the right side, or there's a stairway on the right side that you can see kind of where the entry to the ADU is. That plate height is a little bit lower than the regular 2nd story height. The 1st floor plate height is 9 feet, 2nd story is 8 feet. Then with the main ridge goes from front to back. We have gables on the front as well as on the back, and then a ridge that crosses from side to side. The exception of those 2 gables on the front and back, the others are all hipped. It's a Spanish style. We have the stucco clay tile roofs that are typical of Spanish houses from the 1920s. This one also has we have clad windows with window grids and other Spanish details like balconies, arched windows and openings, and other Spanish elements. There's also some stucco landscape walls, low walls out in front with some gates. That's mainly what we have there. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Taranis?
Yeah, thank you. Gary, just a couple of questions. Just out of due diligence, you have the special permit for the longer garage. So is there a specific intent for that part of the garage that's at the front end of the parking?
The front end of the park, yeah, the front end would be, there's a full parking spot. And then there's some side doors toward their back deck.
Yeah, that back area, what's the intent of use for that?
They want to use that as storage for their like lawn furniture.
Okay. I mean, it's not huge, but I just, I kind of have to ask just to see what the intended use would be, so. Okay. My other question is, you have the special permit for declining height. And in looking at the massing, I really like the way that you have the single story portion of the living room and office towards the front of the house that reaches out to the street. It's nicely sculpted with some of the Spanish Revival details. But my question is, in looking at the declining height, which is applicable to the left-hand side, and looking at that elevation, if we can go to the next sheet here on screen. Yeah, looking at the lower elevation here on the left side, you've got that, which is essentially a 2-story section that's, totaling about, from my calculation, 55, almost 56 feet from that 1-story portion on back. And that's the portion that you're asking for the declining height envelope, unfortunately. So it's not sculpted much. Do you have any thoughts as to how you might break down that massing or add some articulation? Because that whole elevation is going to be at its closest points about 5 feet from the neighboring fence, and that neighbor on that side is pretty close to their side yard, and you're going to have two masses of house, sort of abutting each other, and you're asking for a special permit on this side.
Yeah, we did look at that, and we've talked about that. Kind of with what the owners originally wanted was would have been a much larger house, so we've been kind of cutting back through the process. Would have to kind of cut into, maybe lose a little closet space or a little bathroom space or something like that to do something on that side. But yeah, that is the side that's closer to the neighbors.
Yeah. Another thought is even if there's some way to add some articulation and some scale, breaking down some of these tall vertical two-story lines and walls and surfaces, if there's a way to add some of that, the sculpted walls and buttresses, perhaps add some, clay tile awning roofs, maybe over those kitchen windows, just something to give better scale, to this elevation. I think that's the one that needs some work, particularly because that's where you're asking for the declining height envelope special permit, which I'm not adverse to when you have, some good iconic architecture that needs the support and the relief from the declining height. But in this case, we've just got a two-story mass that's, like I said, almost 56 feet long along this side. So.
Yeah, we could alter those kitchen windows, they're arched there, but we could put in an overhang there similar to some of the others that we have with the brackets.
Okay.
Some
I think
of the finished detail.
something needs to happen along this side. If you could revisit that, I'd appreciate it. So,
okay, thank you.
But I'm just one voice, so thank you.
Commissioner Say?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so Gary, I think this is a very nicely formed and shaped house. Some very interesting articulation, very nice styling. I was wondering if you had any consideration for another introduction of another material, possibly. Like I look at that kind of turret shaped area, and it seems to want to be stone or some type of other material, and just and I know that's not facing the street or anything, but you will see that from the backyard. There might be some other areas as well where that could be introduced, and just wondering if that was of consideration at all.
That's something we could look at. Typically, we've worked on a few of these in the neighborhood, and reviewed other ones from the 1920s and 30s, and usually they don't have that, but when you look at examples from other areas, sometimes they do, like around by Santa Barbara or something like that. So I think it's something we could kind of bring in, and maybe on that tower, maybe sometimes we do it below the screed line on the foundations as well, something like that. But something we can take a look at.
Great. I just think there's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of dynamics going around all four sides of the house, which is really nice. And it seemed like maybe that could add some extra richness to the styling of the home. On that same vein of thought, I know you have introduced some wrought iron details here and there with some little balconies, and wondering if maybe there could be a little bit more introduction of that in some of the elevations. I don't know if it's just, the elevations are drawn very nicely, and I don't know if it's the relative flatness that comes just from the rendering. Just seems like it's calling out for a little bit more detail here and there around the house. I see it around the front of the house, and also the right elevation. So just some added thoughts for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Larios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Gary. This is a beautiful home. I'm going to kind of say something similar to what Commissioner Torona said on that left elevation and on both the front elevation. Yeah, I would like to see like more details. It could be the rendition itself, but there definitely needs to be a little bit more like articulation. I personally would like to see the chimney. The chimney, it just doesn't stick out from the front or from the right side. And one thing that I would recommend is maybe thinking about looking at a terracotta cap or something like a Santa Barbara Spanish style revival chimney, or something that just gives you a little bit more detail and facade. And that could also help you on the right side, on the left side, actually, left side elevation. That could help you with a little bit more detail. But it just looks really plain, that chimney. It's kind of sticks out. So that's the only thing I have.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, are we still doing questions or are we on to suggestions? If you got questions, I'll take them. If you're suggesting, I'll then close the public hearing.
I have one
Commissioner
question.
Gall?
Yeah, the roof material, you just have it specified, Gary, as clay tile. Could you provide us with a manufacturer's cut sheet or something? My only fear is that when I went to the site, the house to the right, we had a nightmare with a few years back, and I don't know what the spec on that was, but they had started with a clay tile roof that really wasn't what was on the plan. So if you could give us just let us know what tile that is that you'd be using on there.
Sure, we can do that. Yeah, actually, I remember that house next door, going to that meeting, but this one is I thought we had it in there, but usually what we use is a Gladding McBean, and it's a Franciscan blend, so it's mostly red, but you get kind of subtle yellow, maybe a little bit of purplish colors, but they're all kind of subtle.
Yeah,
but it has more depth.
Yeah, but if you could get us just a cut sheet on that, we don't need an actual sample necessarily, but that would be helpful, I think.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Then if we don't have any more questions for Mr. Deagle, I'm going to look to see if we have anybody in the audience. No hands raised. Do we have any emails or other correspondence?
There were no public comment emails received.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And then I'm going to move to Vice Chair Loftus, who's patiently waiting.
Yes, I was waiting for the comments time as opposed to the questions time. I think it's a nice project with the comments that have already been made. I particularly want to make sure that there are lots of light fixtures on the outside of this house. I want to make sure that they comply with the local regulations. They're all depicted as identical, and I'm not sure how you would keep the light on the property for the second story balcony light fixture. So just make sure that they all comply, please.
Okay. I was going to make a comment on that declining height. I'm struggling a little bit to find the reason to accept that. And I actually think that left side elevation could look better actually if the second floor went in, even if the roof stayed, giving it a bit more of a pronounced overhang. I think there's an opportunity there, and maybe it's a 3D look at it versus the 2D elevation, but I'm not seeing the declining height variance part yet. I understand you want the square footage and you want to make the program work, and it is actually a nice looking program up there, but I'd also like to see that we are able to comply with the declining height. So that would be something to maybe look at before the next round. So that's it for me. Were there any other comments that didn't get put up? Okay, Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo a couple of things about the detailing. Typically in Spanish houses, you see a lot of wood outriggers or window trims, in a heavy timber type of a thing, or you have inset tiles or, vents that are terracotta. I think that this house could use a lot of that type of detailing. I was going to hit on what Commissioner Larios said about the chimney. It's very square, and you've got you've got at the front, you've got that decorative wing wall. And I've seen in a lot of Spanish homes, that stucco on the chimney gets molded into something that's a little bit more artistic than a square box. So I would go a little bit further than even just the cap. I think I would work with that whole shape right there. But the detailing is really going to be necessary on this. It's very close, but I think it just needs some of those finer details put in there.
Great. Any other comments? Are we ready for a motion? Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to bring this back on regular action when the architect and the applicant have had a chance to address our comments.
Agreed. And seconded by Commissioner Larios. Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Tronis, a second by Commissioner Larios. Any other discussion? Then let's vote.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Larios,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Torres,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6001. Congratulations. Moving on to item 9E, 1221 to 1251 Whitehorn Way. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project?
I spoke with a property owner across the way from Whitehorn, from this building on Whitehorn Way.
Okay. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
This is an application for commercial design review and landscape variance for a new commercial building at 1221 to 1251 Whitehorn Way, zoned RR. The project site consists of a single parcel with 4 existing commercial buildings. The subject parcel is linked to a second parcel to the north and west of the project site because they share private roads for access. Both parcels are accessed on Whitehorn Way, a private one-way road with the driveway entry off Rollins Road. The subject parcel includes an existing mix of industrial uses, including auto repair and storage. The applicant proposes to demolish 2 existing Quonset hut buildings at 1221 to 1251 Whitehorn Way and to build 1 new building in this location. No interior or exterior changes are proposed to any of the other buildings on the parcel. The total floor area for all buildings on the subject parcel will be actually decreased in this case from 51,856 square feet to 42,949 square feet. The maximum allowed is 77,110 square feet, or basically a 1.0 FAR. The proposed new building would be divided into 4 tenant spaces. Each tenant space would consist of a small ancillary office of approximately 333 square feet, automobile repair of 4,128 square feet, and associated storage on the mezzanine level of approximately 865 square feet. These are all permitted uses in the RR zoning district. The applicant proposes to add 13 new parking spaces to the site, which would be located in front of the proposed new building. With the proposed new spaces, there would be a total of 53 parking spaces provided, where a minimum of 53 spaces are required. The existing on-site landscaping is non-conforming. Only 1.2% of the site is landscaped. And I would just note that these buildings were built at a time where we probably did not have any landscaping requirements. So this is one of the reasons why it's so low. The proposed project increases the on-site landscaping from the parcel from 1.2% to 3.1%, where 10% is the minimum required under current code. The applicant is requesting a variance for on-site landscaping for this reason. That concludes my staff report. If you have any questions for staff, I can take those now.
Do you have any questions? Commissioner Torres?
Yeah, Ruben, so we have a separate set of the A0, the A0.1, and a couple of landscape sheets, L 1.0 and 2.0. Do you know what, I couldn't readily see what the differences are. Is that a question for you, or should we ask the architect and applicant what the difference is for?
Yeah, let's ask the architect. I did not work specifically on this project, so unfortunately I don't have an answer for that, but perhaps the architect can answer that.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Then with that, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
We're having a technical difficulty. I'm not able to get him promoted to panelist. We're going to try allow to, there we go.
There it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Neilmeyer, I believe you can unmute yourself.
Sorry.
There you go.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So, Ruben, do you know if Kevin Cullinane or Paul Dumasnil are logged in to the meeting?
Kevin Cullinane is not. Sorry, I'm sorry. What was the other name?
Paul Dumasnil?
I do not see him either. No.
Okay. So, basically, there are two. This is an odd site. It consists of two parcels with multiple buildings. There are two private roads, Whitehorn Way and Star Way. And we propose to demolish the two existing Quonset hut buildings that are in the toward the southern end of the site. The existing Quonset hut buildings, the front of those buildings essentially lines up with the building to the right of our proposed building. So we're setting the face of the new building back to accommodate parking and allowing for a little over 5.5 feet at the rear of the building for exiting purposes, and to the right of the building for just under 5 feet. It's the difference in the two site plans is I was going back and forth with Erica Lewitt, who is our planner, in the numbering of the parking spaces. We found that in the title report, there is an easement for the 5 parking spaces that are labeled reserved, that are behind an empty lot that is parking for the 1221 Rollins building. And so we went back and forth on the numbering system because we were not including the electric vehicle charging spaces and some other things in the count, but we were allowed to do so that we changed the numbering system. Basically, you enter the site off of Rollins Road. You see the diagonal parking spaces to the left as you enter. There are some parallel parking spaces against the building at 1221 Rollins Road that we are eliminating at the request of the fire department for ease of access for their fire truck. And then we're adding the spaces in front of the new proposed building, and we've numbered the spaces on the other side of Whitehorn Way as they continue down, as they apply to this building. And then all the other buildings have their spaces labeled as well. Basically, what we're proposing is a single building that conceivably could be divided into 4 tenants. We don't know what type of tenants they're going to get. Right now, one half of one of the Quonset huts is a contractor's office and storage area. The other half of that building is mini storage, and the second Quonset hut has actually 2 floors in it of self-storage. So we're eliminating all that. We based our parking ratio on the probable use that it might be auto repair, because there's a lot of auto repair in the area and on the rest of the site in particular. So that's 1 per 800 for the repair space versus 1 per 1,000 for warehouse space. Conceivably, it could be one tenant with mainly all warehouse. It could be two tenants, it could be four. So we're not sure at this point in time. The intent was to have a small office space associated with, if we divide it into four spaces, with each space and a roll-up door for each space at the front of the building. And in addition, at the rear, we've added a roll-up door for each space, mainly to provide the ability to open the doors and provide some air through the space and also some light as well. And there's skylights to also provide some light to the interior spaces. The building we're proposing is basically concrete masonry units, split face for the most part, where it's exposed with some metal siding that defines the office areas, and some awnings over the roll-up doors, some steel awnings over the roll-up doors. We're proposing some windows at the mezzanine areas, not only to provide light, but just to kind of break up the elevation of the building. Now, on the south side of the building, a portion of that building is on the property line. And as you progress eastward, the property line takes a diagonal turn, and it's a really odd thing, because right now Mike Harvey in the car dealership there, Mike Harvey's property uses part of our property as part of their driveway and exiting through the site. And there's also an easement from the gas station site directly to the south out to the end of the property, so that they can exit through the property. So it's an unusual circumstance. The height of the building is a little over 26 feet. And the reason with that was we are draining the roof from the back to the front, so we can direct it to the new landscape areas for treatment, and still provide enough clearance in the mezzanine area for headroom and storage. So there's not much else to say. I know that Kevin Cullinane has been talking to Mike Harvey. They've been in discussions. We know that in the future, when the grade separation happens, it's going to probably impact the Mike Harvey site, which was the old Beacons building, that's the large building that's storage right now. And so he may or may not, depending on how that grade separation goes, lose one access point into his site, which makes the need for him to exit through our site even more imperative. So there's not much else I can say. It's an odd area with these private roads. Kevin Cullinane, whose office represents the ownership and manages the site, is in talks with, like I said, Mike Harvey for easement purposes. We're dealing with the fire department for fire department access along the south side of the building. And there's not much else I can add. We're just a new industrial building in an industrial area, kind of hidden away back behind everybody.
Okay,
Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
great. Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Say?
Yes, thank you. I understand you have a landscaping requirement and that you're restricted at the street level. Wanted to ask a kind of a bold question idea is if you're roughly what you need another 5,000 or and change in landscaping to have a big open roof that is open and exposed to the sun and the elements. And in that area that is not future location for solar panels. So basically on the front side of the building, nearest the walking paths, I just did a rough calculation. I come up with about 5,000 square feet of space for a potential green roof, if that is something that could be considered to help offset the landscaping and help the earth a little bit.
we had not looked at that. We were more concerned about where we're going to put the solar panels because we fall under the reach codes for the amount of solar wattage we need to provide. And also we were looking for areas to treat our roof runoff, but we had not looked at the green roof portion of it, to be honest with you. It's something I can raise with the ownership.
Great, thank you.
Vice Chair Loftus.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little stupid here. Which drawing would you suggest that I look at to understand what's the site and what's not? Because all I'm seeing is sort of like line spaghetti, right? There's lots of property lines on many of these projects, and the images are snipped and placed on here. I could personally use a site diagram that shows me exactly what is the site.
Okay, to answer, this is a perfect example. This the sheet A00. Basically, the site is, I guess I would call it a giant flag lot, for lack of a better term. The opening to the site is the entry off of Rollins Road, where it's labeled Whitehorn Way, where that diagonal parking is. The property line is just to the right along the face of that building on Rollins Road, and right at the back of those buildings that face Rollins Road. So there are two parcels. This parcel that we're working on contains the two Quonset huts that we're removing and replacing with a new building, a building to the right, which is an existing metal building, and a building behind it, which is a tilt-up concrete building, right where the hand's moving now, that is auto repair. And then there's a property line that goes down the middle of Star Way, and that is the end of this parcel and the beginning of the second parcel, which houses two buildings, one in the front where the hand is now, that's a one tenant, and then a building back that's a tilt-up concrete building that houses three tenants, and they're all those three tenants are all.
And are you working on that site as well?
No, we're not working on that site.
So can I ask you to do a diagram that makes it absolutely clear for me, anyway, maybe everyone else is not having this problem, it makes it absolutely clear what we're talking about. And don't show stuff that you don't need to show, because I don't know what to do with it. Right? I couldn't possibly make a decision about this project without seeing clearer drawings.
Okay, well,
very frankly,
the reason we show all the parking in all the other buildings is because in order to show not only to Public Works and the planning, they needed to see all the parking and how it's all interrelated with the buildings on the two sites.
Well, then I would suggest doing it as a series of understandable diagrams, because I honestly, I don't know what's going on here.
I get it. I understand.
Okay. Well, if you don't, maybe you understand it because you've been working on it, but I get the drawings in late in the week, middle of the week, and I'm expected to go out to make sense of them and come in here and say something intelligent. And I frankly couldn't do it. I wouldn't know what to say about this project.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Toronis. You're still on mute, sir.
I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah, thank you. I have what I think is a simple question. I'm looking at the elevations, and you have it looks like the metal canopy awnings that are over the roll-up doors.
Correct.
How far do those stick off the elevation?
Well, we have to keep them at just under 4 feet. Otherwise, we have to provide fire sprinklers underneath of them.
Okay, so they're the note's right there, 4 foot. The 4 foot, that 4 foot is about how far they stick off the elevation?
Correct.
Okay, so they're not going to intrude out into your, well, you've got the parking in front there anyway. They're not going to intrude into the fire department lane or anything of that sort.
No, they will not.
Because they're barely sticking out into what is the landscape area on each side. So, okay. All right, I think that was, well, my other question is, there was mention of some landscape portion that had to be reduced because of the fire department turning radiuses.
Right. Can we go back to A00?
Yeah, if I look at your A00 sheet, you have the area where your new building is, which is where the 2 Quonset huts are that are getting removed.
Correct.
And then if I look at the area coming in off of Rollins Road, Right Horn Way, we got the diagonal parking. And then we get to a little portion of a, almost a quarter circle of some existing landscape where there's that redwood tree that's been topped grossly because of the power lines, et cetera. Is that a little area there that seems to be, is that area okay relative to the turning radiuses that you need for the fire department?
That area is okay. There's an exhibit at the end of the civil drawing for the fire truck. However, if we could go back to A00, I can explain. If you look where we're adding the new parking in front of the building, the southernmost parking space,
yeah,
is an accessible space. The planter to the left of that we cut back. Originally, we had it following the property line.
Oh, okay.
The problem with that is currently that southern edge of that existing Quonset hut, about 3 feet off of that is an asphalt curb. And that's where we're putting this new narrow planting strip.
Yeah.
Goes up. And part of that actually we're having to deal with the other ownership, the other land property owner.
Right.
But landscape up against the building, which is partially on their property. Okay?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So we're cutting that landscape back so it's only 3 feet wide along the southern edge of the building.
Okay.
And we cut back where we're coming through, making the turn. How can I say this? If you're coming from the Arco gas station site along the top and entering, we open that up so that we can actually make the fire truck be able to turn there if it wanted to go up that way.
Oh, I see. Where you've got a 25 feet 9 7/8 inch dimension.
Right.
You actually had to cut that landscaping back that's next to the accessible parking.
Correct.
I see. Okay. Then another question that I've got related to what you were just describing, the landscape portion that's along the side of the building, right now it's gravel. You're going to landscape that.
Correct.
The portion that's along the driveway that Mike Harvey Storage uses, the portion that's off your property, are you able to count that landscaping towards your overall landscaping, even though it's off your property, or is?
We are not able to count that, and it amounts to about 103 feet or 105 feet, something like that.
Okay, but you're going to landscape that nonetheless, right?
It's our intent to landscape it.
Okay, but you just don't get to count it. So that's okay. So that's a plus in your favor. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, then let's go back and see if there's any attendees. We have David Coppola, which I think you were trying to get in earlier. Hi, David, are you? Yep, you're unmuted now. There you go.
Yes, have we opened it up for public discussion yet?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so Michael's describing all this parking back there for his new building, but what he's failing to tell you is most of those spaces have been leased out. And the buildings there that are on the east side of Whitehorn Way depend on those parking spots for their employees and for their cars that they work on as storage for the automotive shops that are already there. And if you remember, the space in front of Rollins Road is a no parking zone at 4 o'clock, Monday through Saturday. So those of us who hold those leases, that have had those leases for those parking spots for 30 years, are now being approached by management. We're having our leases canceled. We're being told we're not going to be able to park back there. He didn't also bring out that some businesses only have access to their property from Whitehorn Way, which has been grandfathered into those properties for over 50 years. They didn't mention that some ADA access is dependent on that back entrance. They didn't mention that most of the garbage bins and the garbage services are taken care of on Whitehorn Way. And that when you park 2 cars from the roll-up buildings on Rollins Road in the backside and the roll-up doors on their proposed property project, there is no longer room for fire truck or EMS to access the buildings back there. So it creates a public hazard for the shops that have been there for decades. Right now, there's storage units that are in those Quonset huts. They don't require employee parking. They don't require long-term parking for all day long when employees are there. But what they're proposing is going to change everything in that alleyway that has basically been grandfathered to all of us that have been renting there for decades. I wanted the commission to know that the neighbors are in an uproar over this change and this really reduction in the freedom that we have to conduct our businesses there. And that's it.
Great, thank you, sir.
May I respond?
Let me hang on to that for a minute. And we're going to go to Tony, who has his hand up as well. Tony, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, and thank you. I've been a resident at 1239 Rollins Road for the past 30 years. I've also been a resident of Burlingame for the past 38 years. We've conducted our business back there, and we have been paying rent. We paid rent to the previous owner, Christoffi, and now we've been paying rent to the current owners of that property. And so we're concerned is the impact that it's going to have on our businesses and the business operations that we conduct back there. We currently use that area for egress as well as outgress. And we also use it for employee parking as well as our own parking. They've told us that they're going to be terminating our parking beginning November 1st of this year. And we believe that the termination of our parking is only so that they can come into compliance with the parking that they're going to be required to have, as was addressed by the letter of June 15th, 2021. And it was addressed to the senior planner of the city of Burlingame. And it says, there would be a total of 53 parking spaces provided where 53 spaces are required. So they're terminating our parking so that they can qualify and to come into compliance. This is going to have a great impact on our business, on how we conduct business, like the business I've been conducting there for 30 years. He says it's kind of a peculiar area. We've been back there for 30 years. It's not peculiar at all. People exit out of the gas station, the Valero gas station. It's no longer the Arco gas station. And then there's access to, the road comes around. It's a one-way. Many people go the wrong way in that one-way street. And then the other address the issue is that we get flooded from the roof. As that Quonset hut lets water out, the way they've sloped it, they slope it right in front of our building at 1239. It's the one next to the planter box and the telephone pole. You can go out there anytime it rains. We've had water flood in because of the way they've sloped it down to our building, all the way through 100 feet of our building from our back door, all the way through to the street side of that building with sloping. It's been a nightmare. We can't get in. Many times we have to trudge through the water. I have to have special matting inside with a waffle print so that we can walk in without having a slip damage. So our concern is that we don't care if they want to build a building back there. Our concern is the impact that it's going to have. We want you to know the impact it's going to have. And it's not just me. There are others. They actually did not know how to Zoom. They wanted to be in this meeting, but the impact is on that whole row where you see the parking on the east side of the street. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Not seeing any others. Mr. Niemeyer, I'll let you answer some questions.
Okay, thank you.
Hope you need to unmute yourself. Still muted.
There we go. Sorry.
There you are.
If we could put A00 back up on the screen, please. I'd like to respond to Mr. Capello first. Yes, from my understanding, I know that management has been addressing the issue of the spaces that are leased, and they are what I understand is that they were going to terminate the leases. I don't have anything to do with that, so I can't really address it. With respect to access to the rear of the buildings that face Rollins Road, we are not changing any of the striping along that. So there's still access to those roll-up doors on the backs of those buildings and the doors on the backs of those buildings. So we're not changing that. But I wish Kevin I was under the impression that you couldn't speak during a study session, so they hadn't planned on being in the session. So with respect to the roof drainage, we are draining the roof into the new proposed landscape areas, and also we have permeable pavers in the new parking area in the front of the building, so we can treat our roof runoff. And there was also some talk about there are 3 existing planters, one to the left when you enter from Rollins Road, one still on the left where the street begins to make the turn, and then one behind the first building that Commissioner Taronis inquired about. Those are all raised planters. We've been discussing about removing those planters and lowering them to grade level to capture some of the roof runoff. The problem is that the planter where you enter off Rollins Road and the one that's directly up the lane from that have big trees in there, 2 big trees. So we're a little hesitant. We'd have to take them out, and I'm not sure we want to do that. But we right now, the roof runoff from the Quonset huts is untreated. It flows to the street, and we plan on taking care of that roof runoff. So it's an answer to that question. With respect to the spaces that are being leased, in the termination of those leases, I can't really address that because it's not within my purview to do so.
Okay.
If we go on to a regular action meeting, then the ownership and the representative can address the issue of the leased spaces.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Taronis, do you have a question for the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, you're up.
Yeah, just one last question, Mike. In regards to this issue, you may not be able to answer it based on, what's within your purview or, but do you know, was there ever any consideration for a parking variance that would allow the leases to stay in place?
Well, quite honestly, first of all, I'm not a big fan of going to planning commissions and asking for variances in the first place, whether it's for landscape or park, especially for parking. Mm-hmm. We had not discussed that.
Okay.
But I can bring the issue up to the ownership.
Okay.
I don't
But
know what direction
I'll,
the commission would be.
I'll withhold my comments to the comment period, but I just wanted to ask you if there's any broaching of that subject. Thank you. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Okay. With that, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and then move back to the commissioners. Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, I think the improvement of this property from the Quonset huts that are there is a long time coming. We have. I'm familiar with this area because we had a storage unit in one of these buildings for decades. So I've seen how things operate. What I will say is that the conditions that are being proposed in terms of the new structure and the new head in perpendicular parking to the roadway is a vast improvement over the few number of stalls that are available in front of the Quonset hut buildings as they now stand. So the amount of parking that's being proposed is a big improvement over the existing conditions. So therefore, I think that there is a unique circumstance here in terms of the confluence of the number of properties, the backing of the existing properties right up to the property line, and the use of those adjacent parking spaces that are on this property for some 30 years, if not more. So I think that there are enough existing extraordinary conditions that would warrant a parking variance to where what is being proposed could be built, and several of the spaces that are along the backside of the properties that are on Rollins Road could continue to operate under a lease fashion for those buildings, because those are the people that park mostly. We have an unknown tenant that's going to come into this space that's going to have more parking in front of their building than is there now. So, I think that could solve several of the issues, get a new building that fixes the drainage issues and gets rid of these dilapidated Quonset hut buildings, and improves the conditions immensely in that area. So I think that there's an opportunity for some recrafting of the application before this comes back for action. Thank you.
Mr. Loftus.
Yeah, it seems to me it's also possible to put a smaller building on this site if we knew what the site looked like. I don't know, as I said, but this maybe is one of those instances where too much stuff's being put on a site. It's completely filled to the brim.
I know that, I sympathize with you, Vice Chair Loftus, on that there's a lot of information going on in the site plan, and it's obviously a complicated scenario here with the multiple properties, multiple buildings, multiple tenants. And it is a little challenging to see these parking spaces are being attributed to this building and tenant or not. And I would agree with Commissioner Tronis. To me, the piece that they're asking us to act upon, the demolition of these two Quonset hut buildings and the addition of the new building, it does seem to be adding value to the overall lot. And it seems to be adding parking and some landscaping in a positive direction from where they are now. And I don't know that we're in the position to say, ooh, demo the whole site and redo it now. I don't know that we're in that position to be demanding to where we can get our landscape and our parking and all our other regulations for a large site, when in reality, all they would like to touch is this small area. I guess as a study item, we're not really trying to necessarily approve, but maybe suggest opportunities for a better, more productive meeting next time. And I think Commissioner Tronis's idea of, well, we would maybe entertain a parking variance. But I think it needs to come back kind of clear to us on the new uses, and that they are at least trying to make an effort to cover those new uses with parking and not make it worse by intensifying the uses. And it's really hard to say where our purview stops on this, because I'm not sure that the leases on the parking spaces on the back are something that we have control over, because that's a property issue, not a planning issue between properties. So Assistant City Attorney.
Yes.
What do you think we can vote on?
I mean, I think we can, it's been a little bit of a disjointed conversation, not disjointed, but it's been a little all over. So I think ultimately you can continue it. You can give suggestions as you have been giving. But ultimately, I think kind of at your disposal right now, I think we don't want to get into a habit of continuing upon continuing. But at this point, it may be worth giving feedback and having it come back either for another design review or regular action, depending on what the council or depending on what the commission thinks is best and the amount of work that needs to be done at balancing, you know, the applicant's right to get it heard at a regular action relatively soon.
I did not necessarily hear people say that it was an unapprovable project. There are some extenuating circumstances that maybe need further clarification. And then maybe an opportunity for the owner and the business part of this to weigh in on some areas that Mr. Neilmeyer couldn't. I don't know that I would be opposed to letting it come back as an action item with the advice that we're giving and suggestion of items that should be addressed for us to then be able to take action. I don't want them to just think, hey, they're coming back and it's a free ride. There's definitely a lot to talk about, but I think we could push them in the right direction so that the next meeting is productive. So I'd like to then hear from those of you with your hands up. So we'll start with Commissioner Toronos.
Yeah, thank you. In my mind, continuing the project versus moving to bring it back on action is effectively the same thing. You know, I feel an obligation to move projects forward. That said, what I will say is that I will have a difficult time approving the project with just a sweeping scenario in which all existing leases are simply wiped away that have been in place, if has been claimed, has been 30 years, if not more. I think that there's a more amicable solution in my mind, and that is a parking variance. I think that there are enough extenuating and extraordinary circumstances in terms of the types of uses and the existing configurations and shared properties and leases that warrant a parking variance. You know, I think that the applicant has worked with staff to look at a worst case scenario in terms of a calculation of required parking per square footage basis, just presuming that there's an automotive use at 1 to 800 square feet versus 1 to 1,000 if it were storage. You know, so I think that there are enough circumstances that that would warrant that. In terms of the project, you know, replacing the existing Quonset hut buildings with a new concrete building, you know, with the design that's being proposed, I think is approvable. You know, so from a design review standpoint, you know, I can make those findings. In terms of the landscape variances, trying to squeeze the amount of landscaping into this area as necessary in that with the confluence of uses and spaces. I think that I could make the findings for the landscape variance, but that said, I think Commissioner Say brings up a good point that they could do a green roof in some portions and offer some relief that would offset that variance just to green up the building a little bit. So I think that the project should come back on action when the issues have been addressed.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Larios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Commissioner Taronas with everything he said, with the exception of the parking variance. I think we cannot really dictate what people do with their properties. And even if we do come back with a parking variance, that doesn't guarantee that the owner will do whatever he pleases with his property. So that said, a parking variance for me is a little problematic because I wouldn't like to see any of the EV capable parking spaces go away. And so that said, I'm pretty happy with what I've heard today. Michael did address what happens when drainage from rain occurs. But it's not to say that, like Commissioner Say and Commissioner Taronas, they did suggest other things that I very much agree with. But the parking variance, I do not agree with it, and I would just like to see this project move forward, and I'm all for bringing it on action.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Say.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I too would like to ditto what my fellow commissioners have stated. I'd like to see this project move forward as well. I think there's been a lot of thought put to it. In terms of the parking situation, in the staff report, and I'm gathering that the staff report is, the information is from the application, states that there are currently several on-site parking spaces adjacent to the buildings that are leased to businesses on a month-to-month basis. And it sounds like it may be more than just several. So I'd like to see with the next go around a more complete analysis or some kind of a table that summarizes which, how many spaces are leased to which businesses, so we can understand that breakdown of those 50-something parking spaces and how they would be applied to existing businesses, as well as for the use of the proposed use of the 4 new spaces, what is an expected parking requirement for the use of those spaces, and not necessarily just dictated by what our code says. Thank you.
Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, just a quick observation or comment, but especially with automotive repair businesses, a lot of the parking can be mitigated by interior spaces. So you could count the inside of the building if you chose to do so. And any business could use that space as well. As I know that I know the contractor that works there now, and they bring vehicles inside their shop all the time. So but I agree, and I would like to make a motion to bring this forward on regular action.
I'll second
Great.
that.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Gall and a second by Commissioner Say. Any further discussion?
Just to give a little more to the applicant, was there anyone else who echoed Commissioner Taronas's plans to perhaps have them pursue a parking variance, or is that something that there is only one commissioner supporting? Because I think that might be helpful to make sure that they understand whether there is support for that or not.
I would consider a parking variance if I better understood how the parking worked for all the businesses. In a way, when you step back and look at this site plan, it's not unlike a mall that has a lot of shared parking together now. And so each, when I do that, I have to sit there and say, this space is getting 10 spaces, that space is getting 50 spaces. And I show the table and I prove that in the end, I have all these spaces that help the whole mall. And I think that maybe we need that level of analysis for this to be able to say, because there are all these businesses that really aren't on their property, but are dependent on that now. And so now we're not suddenly going to open up the street and say you can park on the street. Those businesses are out of luck if we don't somehow come up with a way for this to work. So I think the parking variance is a doable thing. I think we just need to make sure that we're comfortably allowing the right quantity of parking for the amount of density of business that we've got going on there, and knowing where those leases fall into play. Others with an opinion besides me? Commissioner Say?
Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying, that I would be in more support of a parking variance if I understood the actual breakdown of how the spaces are currently being used, how many are being leased to the adjacent businesses, and how many potentially would these 4 new structures required to operate their businesses, including what Commissioner Gall suggested, that if it's automotive use, that the interior of these spaces would also serve as parking for some of the.
I think to maybe address Commissioner Larios's concern, I don't think the parking variance is a vehicle to do less parking. I think the parking variance is a vehicle to attribute parking to the various businesses that are working in the area together. So to me, I'm not gonna be happy and say, oh yeah, take out 20 spaces and we'll approve it. No, I think the spaces we're seeing, they need. The question is, how does that fit into the greater community of businesses that are there? And are we providing enough?
I absolutely agree with that, Chair Schmidt. Yeah.
So then we're moving forward with a motion then to bring it back on action. If I remember correctly, Commissioner Gall made the motion, Commissioner Say made the second. And I think we've given a fair amount of advice. Do you agree, Assistant City Attorney?
I do. Thank you for expanding on that.
Thank you. Okay, so then we're going to vote.
Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Larios.
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Torres.
Aye.
Commissioner Say.
Aye.
Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-0-1. And I hope the applicant has got enough information from us. And if needs more, feel free to reach out. And we'd like to help make this work well for them. So with that, I believe that concludes section 9. So moving on to item 10, commissioners' reports. Do we have any? Okay. Then moving on to item 11, director's report.
Sure, I'll keep this brief. Let's see. Recently, Governor Newsom passed into law AB 361, I think it is, which allows cities to continue to hold public hearings virtually on Zoom. So we will continue to do that. City Council has to adopt a resolution every 30 days to do that. So they've either done that or are prepared to do that for this next coming month. So we'll keep you updated, but for now we will be continuing to meet over Zoom. I also wanted to point out that at the next Planning Commission meeting, which is on a Tuesday evening, October 12th, we will be bringing forward the zoning code update to you all for a recommendation to City Council. So look out for that. We also have an FYI on tonight's agenda, which is 1114 Eastmore Road. Please let me know if you think that's okay, or if you would like to have it pulled off and reviewed as a regular action item on a future agenda. I'm not seeing any, so I think Eastmore is good to go. Okay, that's all we had for tonight, unless you have any other questions for me.
Seeing none. Thank you guys all for a productive, long meeting. There's a lot of stuff to get through tonight, but some great comments. So thank you for your help. And I want to adjourn this meeting at 10:39.
Great, thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.